Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Oh, wait, no, there was an amendment.
Oh, there was
Sorry,
a-
there was a change to the agenda, sorry.
Okay.
The agenda itself was not changed, but we're asking the council to approve a revised minutes from the last council meeting. The revised from what was provided in your packet. We did have some errors with regards to attribution of motions from the last meeting. So.
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We do have a presentation this evening, the municipal separate stormwater system, sewer system, MS4 annual meeting. And is there anybody in the audience that's extremely interested, or we can have him give the abbreviated version?
I practiced all day now. Abbreviated.
So the abbreviated version is okay with everybody? Okay.
I don't know.
Straight to questions and comments, that was quick.
Question or comment?
That's the abbreviated version. I can flip through the slides pretty quickly. So we're required to have a meeting every year about our stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's the purpose of this part of the meeting. So a couple of pictures there that might give you a clue as to the type of things we don't want happening in town. Just going to push through this a little bit. MS4 is municipal, separate storm sewer system. We say MS4 for short. It includes all the different ways that we get stormwater when it lands on the ground in town to receiving waters, rivers or lakes or wetlands. And they're all regulated, and all those conveyance systems are regulated. Just all the background why we have to have it. A SWIP is a program that we have to have adopted and review and carry out each year. It has different management practices in it and addresses control measures that will be listed shortly here. I'm going to just skip over the timeline stuff. BMP is the best management practice. It can be all sorts of things. It can be structures, it can be non-structural, street sweeping, education, that sort of thing. The control measures that we work on, public education and outreach, hence the reason we're having this tonight. Public participation, watching out for illicit discharges, managing construction sites to prevent, to the degree we can, sediments from leaving the sites. Post-construction means things that are in place after the project is done to help keep the water clean that leaves the site. And then just good housekeeping, street sweeping, stuff like that. 2017, we did the usual education articles, our street sweeping program. We held a SWIP meeting just like this about a year ago. And we've started reviewing ponds for the effectiveness of removing total suspended solids and total phosphorus, which are two pollutants that can cause algae blooms in lakes and other problems in the receiving waters. 2018 is kind of more of the same. We'll continue with the articles. I know you all read those diligently, so probably this is all repeat information to you. Probably the big thing I would expect this year would be more on construction. I would expect there to be more of that. We've already got some going on that we have to keep tabs on. And in the future, it's basically more of the same. There's really, your town is small enough and sort of on a steady enough path. I don't see any major regulations coming that would change things. I think the biggest challenge is going to continue to be volume control, which is trying to keep stormwater on the site, not just treat it or slow it down, but soak it into the ground somehow. And that's a challenge in a town like this because of the soils that you have. There's a new permit coming out in 2019. We haven't really seen any changes in it that we're aware of that would be significant to you. We'll submit the annual report that's required by the end of this month. If there are any comments from this presentation, those will be included in the report. And we have no changes planned for the SWIP at this point. And I can see here there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 persons in attendance, so I'll note that on the report as well. Now, questions or comments?
I think one of the pictures that we should put at the beginning, I don't necessarily see all the dumping of in the drains. I see of the mowing down all the strips around the ponds. I see it constantly happening.
And the grass in the street.
And getting rid of it so they either have a better view of the pond, have a bigger yard, whatever the reason is. That, I mean, I see that as a,
Removal of buffer bed.
That was my, I actually had that question written down. How much rough must be maintained? Is there a
It depends on the development and the time it was done, the regulations of time, but in general, there should be at least some buffer. I think the minimum width we have now is about 16.5 feet.
And so if you note that somebody's,
So we're keenly aware of that
Decimated.
issue.
okay,
We're also keenly aware of the resources required to deal with it, and
Yep.
so we're looking forward more than backwards
Okay.
to try and prevent this with signage at the corners and stuff that really tell people where they can maintain. The other thing we're doing, and you've probably seen this, and when flats come in, instead of having these features be in easements, we're asking them for them to be outlets, so it's actually city property, so that there's no longer the argument, but it's my property,
Right.
when it's not your property. So just little things like that.
okay.
But awareness to the extent we can get it out there.
Is that something where we should think about retrofitting some of the areas with signs just to make people aware?
We're doing that, we haven't set any yet, but we have plans to, at least in one spot, maybe there've been signs set.
We have a couple areas we've looked at where we've had issues in the past. The discussions we've had at a staff level is, do we start going through one pond or one neighborhood a year and start installing signage? The issue that you run is, it's a resource issue, but a lot of it is just the resources that would be necessary to deal with the human factor of it. I am going, as soon as you put that sign up, I am losing 15 feet of my yard that I've been mowing for the last 10 years. I now have this ugly sign on my property line that is in the way. Now I got a trim around it that I don't like because it wasn't there before, which is at the moment why we've been focusing on new developments, because once it's there, it's not a problem just there when you move in. When you go back and retrofit, there tends to be a lot of pushback, just if for no other reason it's
It's gonna
changed.
cost me a lot to move a fence. Why do I have to move my fence when my neighbor or my friend's development over there, they all have fences right down, you know, you get that kind of stuff will start to come up very quickly, so.
Okay, so we can probably take this as a topic for a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because it's,
you see it all the time.
yeah, I mean, it literally just
And
happened.
my kids are trained well enough now that they see it and they're like, they're not supposed to be doing that. And they're ready to go run out and.
So is this something that the council would like to discuss further at
Yes.
some point?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We could schedule a presentation on it and just kind of show you where we're at, what we're planning to do with new developments, but also examples of where existing developments are.
Yeah, I mean, it's an impact to water quality, so. The other thing in corporation with that I'd like to discuss is our ordinances on, and how do we get better on informing, you know, the grass clippings in the road, the impact that has on the holding pond. I mean, I'm watching my beautiful one that had never had an issue, all of a sudden is full of grass clippings, and it's gonna become pond scum, right? I mean, it's just,
It's nutrients that you don't want.
exactly, it's not attractive, it breeds bad things, and how do we talk about education? Because I don't know that everybody really knows or understands the impact of that.
Or they don't care?
Well,
So on the education
Perhaps.
standpoint, we have, if you remember the education.
I know it was in the newsletter.
We have it in the newsletter. We haven't incorporated a ton of that stuff into our notices on Facebook, but that's the type of stuff that we put
Yeah.
on there.
Pretty good conversation. on Facebook.
Well, let's just, we can, Lou, for a future meeting. Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions? guess
Thank you.
that
Thank you.
Thank you.
concludes the MS4 annual meeting. Public comment. Now we have open for public comment. Anybody have anything that isn't on the agenda they'd wish to bring up this evening? Going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment is closed. Consent agenda. Anything, any changes?
No, Mr. Mayor, other than the revised minutes.
Anything anybody wants to,
Yeah, I'd like-
questions on our poll?
I'd like to pull item E from the consent agenda and move to general business.
Okay,
So that would move down and become item D.
let's move that to item C
C.
and,
Good idea, Mr. Mayor. And then item C would become item D.
yep. I would, did you have,
I was gonna say this exact same thing.
so was I, so.
Okay.
So
So everybody want
you'd
to pull the
motion
same one?
that to amend.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other question I have a question on item D. I think it can just be answered. I read through it, and it's awfully long, but I didn't see any place in the agreement to cover, where it specifically covered if there's a project done that the city didn't authorize, who's responsible? If Bolton Mink is the project manager.
You want to pull it?
Is that something they can answer quickly, or should we pull it?
You ready to respond, or should we pull it for conversation?
Well, I guess I would argue that it's covered. If it's something that's out of the scope and it's fault, the city would need to protest and we'd have to work out how it's resolved, just like happened with the well.
Well, and I read Part D under Section 1, consultant shall be responsible for the accuracy of the services provided under this agreement, maybe I'm, and shall promptly make necessary revisions or corrections resulting from errors and omissions on the part of the consultant
Okay.
without additional compensation.
Long and short, if there's, either party doesn't adhere to the terms of the contract, you follow the normal procedural steps to address that. That's how it's handled.
Maybe it might be a real brief conversation, but I'd like to pull it and move it to general business.
Okay,
Okay, so that would be item
we'll make that item
E.
E, yeah.
That was E?
Yeah.
We got to an E.
So, it's pulling D and E. Okay, do I hear a motion on the amended, or anything else that anybody have
I make a
questions?
motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
All in,
No, you did.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was just more
Motion
wordy.
carries.
You got it.
We're gonna go back to public comment for just a moment, since we've got our county commissioner right here. There's no sense making him wait till the end.
Tom Holtz, Scott County Commissioner. I made a few notes here. Just with that bonding bill we had, that was signed a few weeks ago, we got our IRTS facility for the mentally handicapped, which is a very good thing. It'll be down in Savage there. We got the medical examiners deal. We got, I think, 17 total million on that, so that's gonna go over off of 62, 494 in that area in Hennepin County, but that'll be a nice deal. The medical examiner, Adam Baker, came in, Dr. Andy Baker, excuse me, came in and just, showed us some of the layout that they're going to be doing compared to what there is, and it was an old restaurant, what they're working out of now. And the property they're on is right next to the Viking Stadium, and it's worth a lot of money, so they'd rather sell that, so. Spring Lake Park just opened up today, their new trail. I was at the ribbon cutting for that, so that's, if you get a chance to go over there, it's very nice, right by the casino. And one more thing, the I-35, and Trish can attest to this, boy, it is going to be a mess
Oh,
for a
the
while.
construction.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess for a while, and I remember, I don't know if it was January, they told us that they were going to close that 94 deal off for 3.5 years, and I said, did you say 3.5 years or 3.5 months? And they
Years.
said 3.5 years. And I started actually calculating in my head how much more time that was going to cost me. Then all of a sudden I came to the conclusion that it'll take me less time to get places because less people will be going to 94 And actually, I go twice a week or so to Minneapolis or St. Paul on that road. And it has taken me less time because so many fewer people take that 94. They go other ways. So.
Well, we're
Anyhow.
glad it benefited you, Tom.
It might, yeah, well, I know, but it's just funny, but some people get benefited by it and others
Right.
don't, but you look down that road now and you see pictures and it's just piles of rubble and, they can't get that done soon enough, but we have, construction here too in the county. We have the, roundabout over on the corner. We have 169 over between Belle Plaine and Jordan. The 41, 169 is gonna be this year and 2 more years. Lot of paving, graveling stuff. So we got a lot of stuff going, and when there's nice days, they're going to be doing road projects, and they might do it later. If it rains in the morning, they might work until 10 or whatever. But the season is short, so they're gonna compact things and get things done. So anyhow, be patient.
County should send a letter to Janet Williams thanking her, because I know she testified several times at the legislature for that.
The Ertz facility, yeah, absolutely, yep. We have actually, I believe, sent her a letter. So yeah, she did a lot for that. So yep. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will get to no public hearing, so we'll get to general business.
First item on the general business, the city council has before it a request for a waiver of expenses related to processing of the land use application. This is an issue that the council is familiar with. Through the latter part of 2016 and the early part of 2017, Elko Speedway sought amendments, including various components to the PUD. The primary element was basically taking the licensing requirements, moving them into the PUD and eliminating the requirement for a license for the speedway operations, basically moving it to an entirely zoning regulated activity. That was a lengthy process. It involved some scope change, but over the course of it, a couple of things happened. One, the cost of processing that application was significantly greater than anybody could have anticipated, significantly greater. And two, due to some turnover we had within the finance department with consultants and staff, the track did not get invoices through the course of that. Now, in simple land use applications, sometimes you don't get an invoice because of the delay of when the work is completed, when we get the invoice and send it out, because that whole process takes 30 to 60 days, consistent with typical 60-day process for processing land use application. But the reality is this application took several months because of its complexity and the timeframes involved, and they should have received multiple applications over that timeframe. The idea of submitting the invoices provides the applicant transparency in how the escrows that they have submitted are used to cover our external expenses, and provides them the ability to dispute or ask questions about it in a more timely fashion. They were unable to do that. The other part of it is just the volume of the expenses related to it. This was far beyond what would have been anticipated by staff based on their experience, the consultants based on where they thought this was going originally in their experience, and the consultant who has experience with land use applications themselves. In going through those applications, I reviewed them all in detail, and if you look at the individual tasks or activities that are contained within those invoices that were billed back against the escrow, they're all legitimate, the time associated with them are all reasonable, but it's the cumulative effect. And in reviewing the invoices, as the city, I did authorize pulling some expenses out that I felt were arguably were a cost of doing business for the city, some that were related to activities that the city, through the process, had indicated they would take on before I forwarded them on to the applicant. After the applicant reviewed it, to be honest, they didn't go to the point where they're saying, I'm going to dispute item 6 on invoice 7. They looked at them in total and basically said, we believe that the total sum of the expenses related to processing the application is disproportionate to it. So, and I'm not going to speak for the Speedway, but even if each individual line is may be legitimate, the whole is the sum of the whole is disproportionate to what you get at the end. The individual is disproportionate to the sum of the whole. And basically, they came forward and said, okay, we have our initial escrows that were paid. We're willing to pay an additional $5,000, which they did in good faith, and they're basically coming to the city council and saying, We're asking you to waive the remaining expenses associated with the application. From a staff standpoint, we don't have a recommendation either way. We're simply looking for direction from council. And at the end of the day, it's really a fairness question. Is the amount of the expenses related to the processing of the application fair to charge back in its entirety to the applicant?
Actually, I think there's more to the question. I think that not only are we assessing whether the amount is fair, but we're also assessing whether the fact that they weren't aware of what was accumulating was fair. So I think there's kind of two pieces to it in my mind. And I don't know why I'm always the first one to talk, but you guys are quiet, so. I think clearly the fact that they weren't being invoiced, that's our bad, that's our oversight, and clearly is an impact to their ability to say, whoa, you know, we thought we wanted to go down this path, but this is costing way too much, we want to stop. Not that they would have, but they didn't have the option. So from that perspective alone, I think we need to, I personally think we could absorb some of this. However, I don't believe we should absorb the full amount of it, and so I guess I'm proposing a compromise, and that's my stance.
What's the compromise you're proposing?
Cut it in half.
That was my compromise, cut it in half.
So if I understand correctly, all the money that's being billed here was just direct us paying consultant fees, right? There's not like really a fee to the city at all that we're benefiting from.
Correct, that's covered by the application fee that they pay, so this would be just the escrows to cover external costs. This was a project where, quite honestly, it was labor intensive, and we used external labor in the form of consultants to do the work, and it accumulated to a significant amount.
So at one point in the memo that was put out, it was identified and not really contested that there is a city benefit to some of the cities, or some of what was worked on here, that's for the greater community, right?
Yeah, I think it is fair to say that there is, it's just how would you quantify that? And that is, I don't have an easy way to quantify it, so it would be a subjective decision on the part of the council.
Yeah, I mean, figuring out how to quantify that would be helpful, because I would agree with my other council members. I think that it is excessive. I think there's some error on part of the city on this, and would like to help out. But whatever that exact amount is, I don't know, it's hard to say without being able to quantify that piece of it.
Where it would provide efficiency, I think, to the public is, as we move into the future, assuming the track is there forever, when there are questions that come up related to the regulations of the track, or there are future changes to the regulations related to the track, the current structure that it is in makes it easier to administer. So we probably would not have made the change to, it's basically moved to the new structure we use for new PUDs, as you're aware. And we probably would not have made that change just automatically. So the applicant paid for it, for what they were trying to achieve, but there is an indirect benefit to the public by improving that. The ability to quantify it is how much time does it really save, how many times would there be inquiries in the future, over what type of time frame. Those are purely speculative. It would be a complete sway, I guess.
I think it sounds like about $10,242.50.
That was some quick math off something.
Yeah.
The amount that's owed, it's half.
Okay. I'm questioning your math.
The amount that's owed is $8,000.
No, I know.
Oh, I thought the remaining was 10,000.
No,
20,000.
It's
Oh.
8,985, you divide
Okay,
that
sorry,
by
I
2,
used the
it's
wrong number.
4,000.
I was trying to cut it in half. All right, I'm missing the wrong number.
Don't give those poor guys a
Sorry, I
heart
didn't mean
attack
to give
over
you a
there.
heart attack. I was
So-
looking at the wrong number.
So typically, an application like this takes, a normal, someone comes in today, normal application process, how, you said 30 to 45 days, somewhere?
Normal application, if it's real straightforward, is usually 60 days. If it's a simple land use application, sometimes it'll be 90 days if it has to be continued. If you have a more complex development project, there might be an extension to be able to, for submission of additional materials, et cetera. That's your normal land use application. This was a little bit different. This wasn't just a simple amendment or just a straight up land use application. This was just a complete redo of the existing ordinances and licenses associated with this, and it just took a fair amount of time to do.
Okay, so how much more time was spent then on this versus a new application that would?
That is not a question I can answer because every application is unique and there is no typical.
Can you provide a ballpark or range or best?
Well, to give you an example, if Mr. Johnson hypothetically is coming in and looking for a side yard setback variance for a garage and it's fairly straightforward, the amount of outside consulting time now would be relatively cheap because we have a community development specialist who probably process it internally, and we might be paying a few $100s for a very limited amount of engineering review time and some document generation. Of a complex residential development could be fairly expensive, but in that case, you're looking at construction plans and things like that related to the preliminary or final plat associated with it. Different type of development, so I don't know that you can really do an apples to apples comparison. I know that coming into it, staff, the consultants, and even the applicant believe that the initial escrow would reasonably be able to cover it, but there were scope changes.
Sure.
And the council was advised during the application process that we expected that this was becoming a bigger project than it was originally, and we're probably going to exceed the escrow. But it went beyond that even more. It was very labor intensive. I do want to be clear, although there was scope change and that did increase the cost, I don't think that was the primary driver. I just think it was we were using expensive labor form to do it. If we'd had the capacity to do it internally, it would have cost less. So the fact that we have only a certain level of internal resources means that we push that cost currently onto the applicant and they absorb it. So that's just a function of who we are and what we were at the time that the application was coming through. But there are direct and indirect costs. So if you're working on an application, all of a sudden the scope changes, and all of a sudden you have to redraft things, you have to send things around again, you may require a different meeting or an additional memo. All of that stuff adds up incrementally. It'd be difficult to quantify it. And the invoices, I went through and identified stuff that I could specifically go back and see were directly attributed to it, but there's a lot of indirect costs that would be affected too. But long and short, it's my gut feel and my assessment that the majority of that additional cost is simply related to it took time and it was labor intensive, not to the scope creep. Although it's a factor, I don't think it was the primary factor.
Mr. Mayor, can I address Beth and the audience?
Sure. Beth, I mean, does she have anything to say, or do you just have
I
a
just have a
question?
question. Had you received invoices in a timely manner, would you have at some point stopped this whole process altogether because it was too expensive?
Beth, could you come up?
Simply trying to hold its own without any additional outside sources paying for it. We could have definitely taken a look at it and went, you know, is paying the $1,200 a year that we pay on licensing fee, and we hit $12,000, is that, I mean, that's 12 years worth of,
Right.
13 years worth of 1,200. You know?
Right.
Was I shocked? I was shocked. I mean,
I just want to understand if this is you see a bill and you say, you know what, forget it, I'm done with this project at this point, this is too expensive.
me being the accountant, yes, I probably would have said, is it really worth
Okay.
this?
Thank you.
You know, one thing I look at is, I think, this is just my opinion, is we used outside resources for this, but could we have split the resources and used some inside and some outside? I mean, it seems like all the outside resources were used for this, rather than,
Been a sound reason for that we didn't have the expertise or the.
Well, look, a couple things. Time-wise, we have to allocate the time
Right.
to, on this particular issue, we utilize the people that are most familiar with the project to make it as most efficient as possible. Would the same thing happen today? To be perfectly honest, probably not, depending on the internal workload. A lot, we may have been able to allocate more staff time to help with some of the language development and some of those things. But the same could be true if we go back in time 5 years or 10 years. It's where we were at the point in time. It's how we needed to resource to get the application done. I just wanted to point out for the council that at that point in time, that's how we had to do business. and compared to other alternatives where if we had more internal resources or other organizations that have internal resources, it causes us, if we don't want to subsidize the application, to put it back on the applicant.
I think in the past too, we have, as a city, worked to try to help projects and businesses with application fees and with doing work pro bono, let's say, to get things done. And I think we can count a good share of this to that, besides the fact that they weren't invoiced. And it was, I mean, imagine were doing something at your house and all of a sudden you planned on spending maybe $8,000 or $9,000 and all of a sudden you got the bill and it was 20.
So is it fair enough, I guess I'm just doing a little straw poll here. Is there anybody who doesn't want to forgive some of this? Or are we at a point of just talking about how much we're forgiving?
I think we're,
I haven't heard from
I haven't heard
Josh.
from Josh.
Oh, yeah, you guys just all talk, you know. I try to squeeze in here. No,
You have the floor, Josh.
I 100% think we need to look at this. I think there's a ton of things here. A lot of the questions and stuff, and maybe this wouldn't have had an impact, but if some city council members wouldn't have pushed back so hard on some of the various issues, maybe we wouldn't have dug in so much to some of it, and therefore, I mean, I see it as a tool that, sitting up here, I could probably blackball somebody if I continue to push back and push back and push back, and call for other consulting costs. I mean, so we could eventually weed people out of this in a very strategic type way if we really wanted to.
That's a good point.
Not to say that that's the case, but we own some of the fact that we had a lot of discussion, had a lot of questions, and going back and forth and looking at things further, and so some of that
Doing
scope
our
creep.
due diligence.
Right, and I think there's a benefit for the city to do that, and then that's where we need to look at how much of that do we own, and say, okay, council's just asking more questions, and I think that's part of doing business. And I think future-facing thing, bigger scope is, I hope we get to a point where Renee and Tom and everybody are so booked that we're going to have to get Bob's help again. So now are we punishing those developments that aren't in the works already by making them use the consultant? I think we need to figure out a policy or a way that we look forward, so when we are stretched, because we are a smaller community, a smaller staff, that we have a plan for this.
well,
Because
absorb it or spread it out amongst.
or incorporate it into costs or
Right.
something.
Everybody that's using that service that Renee is doing, that Bob is doing for Renee, is spread out amongst all the people that are having projects done by Renee.
Okay, so I'm hearing, I think that we all want to forgive some or all of this money. So do we have a consensus on what that is?
Well, do we have a consensus that we're gonna do something?
I
Yes.
think we all
Okay.
just said
It
yes.
seems like everyone's.
Okay, so
How do we figure out?
how do we figure out how much? I personally, after looking at it, and especially with what Josh said, I think what they've already paid is probably enough. I really believe that.
Okay, Josh?
I absolutely agree. I think right now it's hard to dig into the details and sit here on the fly, try to
Well, yeah.
pull out numbers and do different things. I think
Right.
we do that now, and then we really force ourselves to have this discussion to figure out a consistent process moving forward. We're gonna be talking about another project where we're talking $8,700. And I mean, it's almost
Yes, we
identical
are.
numbers,
Yeah.
and we're talking about not pushing that. And yet we have a very great business partner here in our community. So, I mean, I think we absolutely.
Joe?
I think that was perfectly stated.
Okay.
I would agree completely.
I agree.
Okay, motion to not charge any of the remaining fee.
Second.
Is that good enough, Morrison? Okay.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just want to say thank you very much for working with us. We enjoy working with the city.
And we hope we have a very long relationship.
And by all means, you guys are all welcome to come out to the city. I know you guys, or the Speedway, I know there's regulations about that, but always make sure you.
We just can't come together.
I was there yesterday. It was.
But, you know.
Or for free, right?
Yeah, or for,
Just can't
you're
get
more
us
than welcome. Robin's always there on a Saturday night, not so much me, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. And I do need to say that the Speedway has always, I mean, they've always been very good to work with, in my experience on this issue, so.
Okay, item B.
Approve the purchase agreement between the City of Elko New Market and Global Properties. I'll have Renee give the presentation on this item.
The city owns 3.1 acres of property remaining in Dakota Acres. We've received an offer from Global Properties to purchase the property for development. The intended use of the property is a 56-unit apartment building development. The offer price is $266,000 with $10,000 of earnest money. The city would be obligated under the purchase agreement to provide a boundary survey and a title commitment. The buyer would propose to complete a phase 1 environmental assessment. Upon their review of those items and their satisfaction that they can use the property for their intended use, a closing would be scheduled within 30 days. And we have provided some information for you regarding the appraised value of the property based on an appraisal that the city conducted in the summer of 2016. They've not had that appraisal updated. The assessed value of the property, and then as you know, this property is carried as a asset in the 318 bond fund, and we have been tracking the debt against these specific properties. So based on the, those facts presented in the staff report, staff does believe that the offer is fair and recommends that you approve the purchase agreement. Do you have any questions?
Joe?
Can you go back to the commitment from the city to provide some services on the property? What is a approximate cost to the city for that?
Probably less than $2,000. I haven't had an estimate from Bolton and Mink yet, but I would say probably $1,500.
And a follow-up, how was I noticed the amount that was offered was about 10,000 less than the appraised value? Does that sound about right?
That is correct. That is correct.
I'm just curious how that was there any magic to how that was arrived upon?
No, the representative of the buyer is here tonight. I can tell you that in our negotiations, there's a large easement over a portion of the southwest corner of the property. It's a natural gas line easement. On the south side, it's 35 feet in width, and then it fans out to 70 feet in width along the west property line. And they indicated as they tried to lay out their development on the property, that really was a hindrance, and that was the reason for the lower offer.
But wouldn't that be counted into the appraisal and impact the value at the appraisal?
The appraiser had appraised all of the outlots in the beginning and just assigned a flat $2,000 or $2 a square foot. They didn't really get into detail about in the report about evaluating.
This is only a portion of the remaining portion of a larger lot that was appraised and assigned that value. So on the larger lot, that easement may not have posed the same level of impact to the property as it does on the smaller piece.
Got it. Thank you.
And Mr. Gensmer is here.
So basically,
Any other discussion? You first.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, are we just looking for a motion to approve this?
If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve said purchase agreement.
Second.
Motion Timmerman, second Timmons. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Okay, item C, which is the old,
So that's now the commercial vehicle?
Yes, it is.
yep, no, item C is the commercial vehicle.
If you want it.
This also is an item that I'd have Renee provide the presentation on, since it is an item that she wrote the staff report on and came up through the planning commission.
Okay.
Commercial vehicles.
There's no rest.
Council is well aware that there's been discussions regarding the commercial vehicle section of the city's code. From the fall of 2017 to the spring of 2018, there was a discussion about just allowing certain commercial vehicles in residential zoning districts. It was found there was an oversight in the code. It was really a correction that we were dealing with. That an initial correction was adopted by the city council in April. There was really a second request that as a result of that earlier process and some enforcement action, the planning commission wanted to review the definition of commercial vehicles. It's Class 1 commercial vehicle, Class 2 commercial vehicle. And there was some direction on possibly just simplifying the definition to reference specifically vehicle weight and size rather than vehicle type. The original definition had also referenced a number of vehicle types, and they thought of, considered just taking that out. At the April Planning Commission meeting, staff presented an option for amending the definition to begin the discussion. It was important to the commission that they had 5 members present, so that was a little bit of the reason for the delay. So with the 5 members present, it was not a consensus. There were 2 members of the commission that felt the definitions were fine as they were, but 3 that thought a change could be considered. So staff was directed to post a public hearing on the matter at the Planning Commission meeting in May. Public hearing was held, and again, there continued to not be a consensus on the matter. There was a motion that was failed. I'll back up just a moment. First, the question was asked by the chair. It was kind of a straw poll vote. Does everybody agree that the definition should be changed? And that was 3-2. There was 2 that did not think it should be changed and 3 that thought it should be changed. Then there was a motion on the table to amend the ordinance to define a Class 1 commercial vehicle as a 18,000-pound gross vehicle, or over 18,000-pound gross vehicle weight, and 9.5 feet in length and 9.5 feet in height and 24.5 feet in length. After fairly significant discussion, that motion failed. And a new motion was reintroduced, which lowered the gross vehicle weight for a Class 1 commercial vehicle, anything over 14,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, 9.5 feet in height, and I think I misspoke in my earlier statement, 22.5 feet in length. So the recommendation before you is what was recommended by the Planning Commission.
Which was a 3-2 vote.
It was a 3-2 vote.
Josh?
Do we know how they got to 14?
Yes, I do. There was a fairly significant questioning by staff and asking staff to basically Google and display various types of vehicles. And as an example, an F-450 crew cab long box would fit in that definition.
Can I ask a question? Wasn't it 4-0? 4-1, I mean? The first was 3-2, then it was 4-1.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sounds right.
Yes, that is correct. The first motion failed 3-2. The second motion passed 4-1. With Commissioner Krupman, the dissenting vote.
One other question that I had from somebody is, so if a vehicle is parked out in front of your house and has a trailer behind it, that raises the weight. If it's got a...
The gross vehicle weight rating does not apply to a trailer that they're pulling.
It may not apply to it. I think it does say that.
Yeah, in the staff reports that were prepared for the Planning Commission meeting.
But that doesn't make it any less of a potential, I guess, nuisance, for lack of a better word.
Right.
That's correct. That, the trailer would likely be considered a second, or the second commercial. Let me try to think about this.
Oh, it's
It might fall
okay.
under the recreational vehicle section of the ordinance.
But it would be treated as a separate item.
It would be treated, the trailer would be treated as a separate item. That's a separate section of the code. You're essentially allowed 2 recreational vehicles on a property. A trailer is defined as a
Class
recreational.
2 is talking about trailers.
Well, I take that,
All vehicles other
Yes.
than Class 1 commercial vehicles, including pickup trucks, vans, trailers. So I guess trailer is considered Class 1.
okay, I want, I need
So
just,
they took the
a moment.
explanation out.
They did.
okay, can I read the,
Yes, please.
can I read this aloud? A commercial vehicle is defined as any vehicle used for commercial purposes, including but not limited to trailers, motorized, wheeled, or tracked vehicles displaying a company logo, commercial equipment, fixtures, or tools. So if somebody's allowed 2 commercial vehicles on their property, that trailer would be 1.
One thing that I looked up and I found out is if you buy an F-350 or an F-450, even if it's for your personal use, it is classified a commercial vehicle because of the size.
So state regulations related to the, MnDOT regulations related to vehicles is not the zoning regulations. We may use gross vehicle weight as part of our definition, but they're different definitions for different purposes.
For us, it's a vehicle used for commercial purposes. So somebody could buy a F-350 for personal use. We wouldn't consider that a commercial purpose.
So if a person bought a semi-tractor for their personal use, and what wasn't a truck driver, that would be legal to park on the street.
No, I mean, that's
No,
still
that's
considered a
over the-
commercial vehicle.
Why?
Per
That's a
our-
great point.
Per our definition.
It's
It is.
right.
Well, we're talking about commercial vehicles here.
Right. But it would,
If I bought it for fun, why?
If you bought it for fun,
Right.
it wouldn't be, it would just be, MnDOT would, or whatever would be saying it's a commercial vehicle. For you, it's a personal vehicle.
If you're that wealthy, we'll let you have it.
But seriously,
Maybe
it's a
that
good
is,
point.
maybe
You
that's
know.
why the previous definition had all the extra
Yeah.
exemptions.
You know, it's,
Mhm.
for me, I just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Sure.
I have a procedural question.
Okay.
If we wanted to change anything, we're not saying we do or don't, if we want to change anything, how does that process work? I mean, do we have to do another public hearing, does it have to go back to planning?
We just
Can we
change
just
it.
strike something and change it?
Mhm.
Okay.
It depends to the degree that.
To the degree.
The degree that you want to do it. If you're looking at a minor change, so for instance.
Well, let's say
you
add or
wanted to add some
subtract 1,000
clarification.
pounds or something.
I wouldn't, if you're going to change the way it's entirely structured, it would be significant change to other, so,
I just didn't know if we couldn't do anything anyway.
So we could go back from the 14,000 and just keep it at 18,000
correct.
without any trouble.
and honestly, I'd be supportive of that.
Any further discussion?
I gotta think that there was a reason they went from 18 to 14 based on the types of vehicles they were seeing
Well,
that qualified because of it being 18 that they were thinking we wouldn't want.
And I asked,
So
oh,
what,
in
can we get more
between,
clarification on what the,
Weren't there other cities at 14 that defined?
There's cities up to 19.
Just
Well,
right.
I mean, I don't care what other cities do, I care what we do, sorry.
Well, and
I agree.
I look at the cities that are on the fringe that we compete with, which is basically us, Lonsdale, that are in the area, and New Prague. And that's basically our competition.
The planning commission was much more concerned with cities similar to Savage and
Which are much more, have completely different, they're completely different than we are as far as their ratings with the Met Council, and they're,
I just would like, do we have examples of what would be the difference between a 14,000 pound vehicle and an 18?
May I?
I mean, is it an ambulance versus a fire truck? Is it I mean, I have no concept of what 4,000 pounds. Do you guys have a concept of the difference with 4,000
Do you have
pounds?
the original pictures or not? I do in my truck.
Kevin?
Is your truck in the parking lot?
Yep.
Well,
Not the truck that you're talking
Oh.
about, but I have pictures of it.
But Kevin,
Go.
you and I had spoken previously about the impact this would have on your business and the different weights and what have you. Would you mind sharing what you and I spoke about earlier regarding the weights of the vehicles, the wrecker versus?
Could you come up to the podium then, please, and state your name and address and business?
I'm Kevin Merrick from Merrick's Towing on Lakeville. We have 4 employees that live in the Elko New Market address. Part of their job description is to be on call 24 hours, on call rotating different hours. We do that because we deal with like police departments, fire departments, stuff like that. We need to be on scene in a reasonable amount of time. That's a very crucial part of it. We have firefighters, policemen, ambulance people and stuff like that all out on the freeway, and until they get there, we get there, everybody gets there and cleans up whatever the situation is. It's unsafe for all of us to be standing out on the side of the freeway. So in my mind, the biggest thing is that our response time is really based off of the safety of everybody that's first responder as well as everybody going down the road. And that's something that I feel has been lost altogether in this whole topic. We're talking a few thousand GVW difference, and we're really losing track of what's safe and what's more important in the big picture, in my own personal opinion.
Does the 14,000 restrict any of your vehicles?
All of
Whereas but the 18 does not?
Right.
Okay, well, that answers my question.
I own 6 trucks, and 3 are 26,000 GVW, and 3 would be under the 18.
Okay.
Where do your employees park these vehicles? On their driveways or in the street?
They do both. If it was a big issue, we could definitely, make sure that they are parking in their driveways.
It could be, yeah, I do think that was one of the points raised as a concern from some of the citizens was if they're in the street,
Can't see
they're
them.
wider than a standard vehicle,
Visibility.
visibility, width
is
of the
poor.
roads, that type of thing. So,
I've got a question for Steve. Is it important to have the tow trucks get there as quickly as possible on the
Great
freeway?
to have them there as quick as possible.
It is-
Open up traffic lanes and that, yeah.
Does it potentially save lives, getting them there quickly?
Oh, I mean,
yes, because the
I would
vehicle's no
agree
longer in
with
the
him
road.
as far as it's a safety concern that we have the longer that we're on the side of the road or that. Yes, that I would say.
Well, and if the vehicle's still sitting there in the middle of the road, it's still potentially gonna get hit.
Right.
But ultimately, what I was trying to get out of you, and I think you answered it, was,
Right.
the size and your vehicles and how it
It
would
answers,
impact.
it answers my question.
Thank you,
I was just
Kevin.
curious.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Joe, you had a motion, I believe?
I didn't make.
Oh,
No,
I
I think
thought-
we were talking about changing it back to the 18,000.
I just said that's something I would
Okay.
support.
So the question we were at was, do we want to put it back to the 18,000? And hearing what I just heard, I think we should.
Can we put it back to the 18,000, but require that these vehicles must be parked in their driveway to allow residents to be able to have access on their own road and the visibility?
Well, I especially say we should probably have them on their driveway, especially on streets that are less than 30 feet
I would
wide.
just
I would just
leave it
say-
at on
Yeah.
the driveway.
On their driveway?
Period.
Yeah, and I'm all for that.
Okay.
Okay,
Is-
is that something we can change without?
I would recommend that we make that change and bring it back and put it on consent agenda, so that we have time to make sure the language is accurate.
Make a motion, or Josh?
Or just direction?
What do you think, Josh?
Can I
No,
make a comment?
Renee has a comment.
I was just reading through the minutes before, and just trying to see who was against what, and it looks like the sole vote against was probably, I wasn't there, so I won't hypothetically speaking here, they still wanted it to be the 18,000, so they didn't want to go for the 14,000
That's
change,
correct.
so,
That's correct.
yeah.
The discussion tonight regarding allowing the tow truck, I just want to make note, if your decision is specifically pertaining to an emergency vehicle in this situation, that, you know, that's one thing, but
So we
it
would
will,
leave it at
it will-
14,000, but.
No, I
it's
see what
it's
you're saying.
opening up
So could we-
everything.
Right.
It's opening
It's
up
gonna open up,
18,000.
Right, do we specify that it's?
14,000
an emergency-
unless, yeah.
It's an emergency vehicle, which
Yeah,
is
but-
defined as da-da-da-da-da.
It is a tow truck defined as emergency vehicle.
Right.
Okay, so we would have
So we'd
to,
have to add that in as a
Specifically as a-
exemption or whatever.
We'd have to say unless tow truck.
I have a question for the city attorney in terms of, you have expressed some opinions about them being parked on the street. Would we also have to review the traffic section of our code, or the right of way?
That's why I would recommend not adopting anything tonight.
Well,
So
let's do
just
this. Let's do this, let's go to the 18,000. We go back, we send it back to the planning commission to decide if, to come back, or we have her come up with language for us for parking on the
I like
streets.
this option 2.
I think we've asked enough of the planning
I
commission.
agree.
The planning commission,
They didn't like it.
well, they put in a ton of, I mean, I don't know how many meetings you went to, probably, I mean, more than.
I went to the last one.
It seems like there was at least 4 meetings where they were talking about this in some way, shape, or form. They had a public hearing. I don't think it's fair to go back to the planning commission. and have
Well, I was just, the only thing I was thinking
I
is
understand.
simply for the parking on their private property, in their driveway.
But I think it's really more of a legal question and a verbiage question that
Yeah.
we then bring back to us. At this point, we've got the information where the planning commission was.
Right. I think if what we've just discussed is something that we're all comfortable giving staff direction on, maybe then staff can do that and bring it on consent for the next meeting.
So,
Anyone opposed to that?
so,
Can
So
I
what
make it
we're-
easier for you guys? The last.
no, if you want to speak, approach,
Oh, okay. I mean, this would be.
approach the podium and give your name and
This would
address.
be very helpful, I think. My name is Gene Mager, I live at 41 West Lewis Street. The last ordinance amendment you passed says they can only park it on a residential lot. So that's already in there. Am I not correct? Your last ordinance, the amendment,
That's
Well,
fine, we can.
well, I mean, that's what you want, that's what you're looking for.
Right, but
Yeah.
we still want to take this back, have it be reviewed and come with our language.
It doesn't even allow them parking it on the street.
That's,
And we're,
It says what's allowed on a residential lot.
so it'll be a quick review.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
that's all I have to say.
No, it's fair.
That's
It's
fair,
already
yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah.
okay, that's good.
It's already there.
We just want to make sure she gets the language for what we were looking for right.
Right.
So is everybody in agreement that she brings that back in next meeting's consent agenda?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Is that sufficient direction?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item.
Barsness. Barsness.
Well, we got the, are we doing Barsness or are we doing the
Barsness
city
is D.
engineer?
EMI is E.
City
Bolton was E.
Bolton
What?
was E.
Bolton was E.
Bolton was E.
Okay.
At least that's what we said. I don't really care.
It doesn't matter.
No,
You could flip a coin.
there's nobody here from
Well,
Barsness,
let's
but
go to the Barsness one.
we need motion to take it off the table.
I'm going to say that I'm going to suggest we leave it on the table to the next meeting.
Why?
Since we've got the time, it's, the reason being the project is still moving forward. I've talked to,
Motion to take it off the table.
Yeah.
Second.
Continue it? Is that like?
No, like,
Yeah, I would
take
like to
care of it
discuss it
tonight.
tonight. Motion
Yep.
to take it off the table.
I second that,
I don't understand what the motion to take it off the table means.
so that we
The
don't.
mayor is suggesting that we leave it on the table and continue it for another 2 weeks
Got it,
without
okay.
discussing. I would like to discuss it tonight.
Yep.
So I am motioning to take it off the table.
And I
Thank you,
second that.
civics
You're welcome.
teacher.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye.
Well, the motion is to have us discuss it,
Correct.
correct? Yeah, then I support that, aye.
Okay, motion is off the table. Let's go into the discussion.
I think there was an issue, but that was
Oh, Josh, would you like to start? You say you never get to talk.
No, by all means, I like to listen first.
I think I was fairly clear.
Well, and I can start this one because
Yeah,
I
go
wasn't
ahead. Oh,
here
you
last
weren't
time.
here. Yes,
So,
awesome.
Kate,
I feel that, I'm trying to get to my paperwork and my numbers here. Give me a second. I'm trying to find
ask
it.
for the
Control
full-
find.
what I'm saying.
Control
F.
find.
Control F.
Control F.
And then
Control
search on a
F.
keyword that you, and then
Oh, look at
search on a
that.
keyword that you know will bring you there.
Oh, there we go. I never knew that. I learned something new. Sorry.
This is going great.
This is awesome. Okay, so basically we are looking at an outstanding balance of $8,768. My huge issue that I have with this is he paid a $5,000 check knowingly that he knew that he owed money. He still owes money. Then he goes and he cancels that check, puts a stop payment on it, which is illegal because it is for funds that have already been spent that he owes money for. So he has gone ahead and canceled this check and stopped the payment on it, okay? He needs to pay it. I don't know that we're gonna get anything out of it, but I think we make a statement and we explain to them, we go forward with it. If I am a business, and if I owe money to somebody and I wouldn't pay it, they would come at me with a lawsuit. Fair, you don't make a payment at your house, they're gonna come at you on a lien or a foreclosure notice or something. I think we have given him ample opportunities to come forward and to, either stop the everything of working with him and just say, I can't do it, I can't afford it, and be honest with us and just be, I'm done, I'm finished. He didn't do that. So I think we need to be paid. I don't know that we'll ever see it, but I think we need to make a statement. We need to make an example that, our residents should not have to pay for this amount of bill that is there.
I'm not gonna disagree with you, but I think we're going about it the wrong way because we're only approaching one person and there's a group of ownership on the property.
Whose name was on the
But the application would not have been accepted without all the owners saying they agreed with it. They all had to sign.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on this. My son does a lot of property cases, does a lot of property items in court.
So are you saying we shouldn't go just after Warren, but the whole?
We have, if we're gonna have any chance of getting anything, or if we do get anything, it's gonna cost us more from Warren, because we're only gonna get, if to say there's 8 people listed on the property that own it, we're only gonna get an eighth of it, and then it's gonna cost us more to get that eighth than what we collect.
How many people were on the property when he made the application?
There was one applicant, and there's other individuals who signed consent as owners.
Okay, so legally,
What does that mean?
The consent as owners,
Legally, you can go after just Warren as
Okay.
the applicant. You can also go after the other individuals on the property who consented.
So I think, quite honestly, there's a fairness question, regardless of recovery. Is it fair, regardless of an assessment based on Bob's informal inquiries? Is it fair to go after those other individuals who weren't party to the application, as far as the application or the project itself? They were not part of the development group in any way. They simply
did
were.
sign off saying that they gave Warren all rights to do whatever, so they gave him their blessing, which
So in that way,
entails-
we could go after him if we so chose, but we're not required to do so. I think the mayor's point is that he believes from a legal standpoint, his opinion is that the legal strategy would be more successful if we went after the rest of them. Staff does not
Can
believe.
we ask our attorney what she feels?
For collection purposes, you're probably better off going after all of them.
Okay.
Staff is not recommending that because from a, quite honestly, my opinion, from a fairness standpoint, they weren't party to the application. They weren't the ones who were requesting the services that were rendered at this particular point.
Stopping.
But they would have,
But yeah,
they would have benefited from the project going forward. That's why they signed.
That's all well and good. They were trying in good faith to get something done and put control into somebody's hands. Go ahead, Josh.
I hear exactly where everybody's coming from. I mean, so is it stupidity on their part to give control to Warren, and should they not be held accountable because it's still them signing off on it? I get the fact that, you know, and I get what Tom's saying too, or the recommendation to not, because they weren't a part of it. They also chose not to be a part of it. They could have been a part of it. So is it, so I mean.
But, right. And so it comes down to you hire a person to do a job. You don't realize they're.
He wasn't hired, he was part of the ownership group.
I am giving it just an example
Okay.
of, okay, maybe hire is not the right word, but you've tasked somebody with, I mean, unless you're a micromanager, which maybe you need to be, I don't know, I can't speak to that. I just,
They would have benefited from the project, right?
Right.
And
well,
they-
I'm assuming,
And
sure.
they signed off on it knowing that Warren was in charge of this project, so I
So
think your
they're
point is
putting
there's some
responsi-
culpability on them, right?
There's, well, no, yes.
Or am I
and-
misstating
well,
that?
To me, it's all about, so I manage an employee who I've tasked with doing something and they go off and I work for a bank and let's just say they embezzle $50,000. Am I responsible
Good point.
for that? Right?
If you're not responsible for overseeing them, you may be.
And maybe right, maybe I am, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel right with.
Gets back to the point that Tom raised.
Yeah.
What raised, as far as what is the point? I mean, are we trying to collect? If our goal is to collect so the taxpayers don't pay more
Then we go
money,
against everybody.
then we go against everybody. If the recommendation though is to not do that, because, you know, they didn't have a part, I mean, so I think we have to decide, is the whole intent to get our money's worth and be most efficient and use our attorney's time as effectively to get what we're looking for? And if that's the case, then I think we have to think about the strategy behind that and then therefore weigh the pros and cons of doing it.
Can we back up a second, though?
Then I'm gonna say one thing, Joe, first. That's exactly why I'm saying to wait on this. We've got, according to our attorney, we've got plenty of time to do something. But I don't want to, if the group that's working on it right now, which includes Warren, comes back, we're gonna get our money, I'm sure. We can make sure we get our money before
Has
they.
anything been addressed to the city yet? Has anyone come forward to the city stating that they're working on this corner lot?
Not directly, I have heard from several people that are in the group that are talking.
And we've heard numerous times that he was gonna make this go, and that he was gonna have the money to pay for this, and that I'm sorry, his word is, I'm questioning it. You can sit there and tell me till I'm blue in the face that you're working on it, but you're not working on it until I see something walk through this front door stating that you're working on it. So until then, we're supposed to hold on to a debt?
Well, it's not, to go for it right now, the way we're doing it, our chances of collecting are very small. So to wait a little bit and see isn't gonna hurt us.
What is a little bit to you?
Well, how long have
If
we
they
got to
don't
file?
Come here in 6 months, then we're,
2 years.
May
2 years.
May I interrupt
Okay.
with something that could be pertinent to this discussion? Tom, are you able to share the conversations that you've had with the existing ownership group as it stands now?
No.
Okay.
We've had some discussions with them. I would not feel comfortable sharing more than I've already shared based on those discussions,
That's why I
think.
phrased it that way.
Yep.
So, thank you. You guys can go back to arguing. That was all
well,
I had.
and I'm not trying to argue, I'm just looking at it from a business standpoint. The city is a business at this point. We are holding a debt. The person has not paid this debt. How long do we hold on to this debt in hopes that someone's gonna walk through the front door and say, yay, we're gonna do business with you.
Oh, and we're gonna pay what?
And we're gonna pay
Was
what
back
was
then.
already, yeah, we have this new developer that's gonna come in now, and that new developer is gonna pay my bad debt,
Well,
which I
I will say this. I was at a meeting with Warren Rice Companies, which is a large investment group. And they're talking to go somewhere between 40 and 50% of the project, putting up money. So it is a real group.
But are they willing to go ahead and pay his back debt? Not only to us, I mean, he has other debt, I'm sure, out there other than just to the city. So is this new developer gonna come in and rectify all of his debt so that he
I don't
can
know
move forward?
what other debt he has to other people.
It's just
I doubt if he, I really doubt he does.
Well, that's
because all
not
the
actually
dirt-
relevant,
Well,
so
It's
we
not
need to stop.
relevant
No, but
because he did all the dirt work himself.
Let me start by just kind of seeing where we're at from consensus. Everyone, where is everybody at with just the general principle of collecting?
I'm struggling with spending the time and the resources to go after such a small amount, when we just waived another small amount, in my opinion.
But for
Grand scheme of-
very different
Different
reasons.
reasons.
But just one at a
There are
time.
similarities because he did not get an invoice till the end.
But-
Mr. Mayor, if I can interrupt,
Sorry,
I
Josh.
wanted to hear where everybody is at on this
Okay.
issue, so we know where to go with this conversation.
And I struggle because in the business that I'm in, I have elderly individuals living in my buildings that are paying $4,000, $5,000 a month to receive services. They flip over to EW, now they can't afford it. Now I have to sit in my head of, okay, how am I gonna collect the money that's for the previous month? Do I evict? And if I evict, I know I'm not getting that money back. So now I gotta think of a different strategy and how can I work with them? And it may piss me off and frustrate me, and I may not wanna do this for this particular individual, but for the betterment of, I'm struggling with.
So to summarize, you're not convinced either way at this point yet, right?
I'm gonna find it hard to try to go after it because I don't see the value in
Okay.
it regardless.
I don't, at this point, I don't see the value of going after it.
Trish?
I am struggling with the precedent. I think the reasons we did what we did on the last item, and I apologize for interrupting you, Josh, were for polar opposite reasons,
Polar
right?
opposite, yep.
The one reason or the reasons we gave over here were the positive,
Right.
you know, there's a benefit to the community, we believe they've paid their fair share, there were those conversations. I'm not hearing any of that here.
So you-
What I have heard over a long number of years is, this has not been easy, this has been a difficult process down the line. Now we're talking about a financial impact. I struggle with setting a precedent of not pursuing
Okay.
a legal action.
So you're of the
So
position
I'm
to
more
correct.
on the side of let's go for it.
Kate, I think your position's
I-
fairly clear.
It is, and then I don't mean to be such a witch about it, but I just, I would be more willing to forgive some of this if it wasn't for the fact that he went ahead and gave us a check for $5,000 and then a stop payment on it. That,
Versus working
that
with us.
just,
And I haven't stated my opinion yet. At the last meeting, I did say I don't think it's worth the time, just from a pure business practicality decision. I agree with the precedent piece, and that is something that bothers me. But where I'm struggling with is how much time and energy, if we pursue legal action, we're just continuing to add hours and time and energy and effort into something that's already been a money pit for the city. And I would just assume move forward. And it's not the precedent I would like to set, but it's part of the nature of doing business to some big extent. So now that we have no consensus,
I'm gonna say
No, we
that I
actually
would
have 3
agree
to 2.
with going after the money once I'm sure that something isn't going to happen. Once
And
he's
I
in.
don't get that part.
Well, I don't want to sour the water, because if Rice Companies is real, they are definitely real. I talked to a VP and their president.
And they may be real, it doesn't mean Barsness is part of it.
It does
We don't
mean-
know that.
Well, Rice Companies is real,
And-
but we are talking about two different things.
Right.
Because Rice Company, they're a smart business, and
Yeah,
they
but
may
the-
decide they want to still pursue this,
Right, they may go some,
regardless of this.
but but they are working with Warren right now. Once they are working with somebody else, I would not,
Mr. Mayor, what's your level of confidence in Warren's ability to complete this project?
about 50%.
About 50%. And is that a high enough comfort level for you to continue waiting?
Not to continue to wait, but I know we've got up to 2 years before we have to go with the legal action.
I think we just cut and run, or we don't. We make a decision, we're either going to do it, or we're not gonna do it.
Renee, are you able to share?
I wanted to add one thing, Mr. Mayor. I heard you say that he did not receive a bill until the very end.
Well, that's,
This escrow account went negative. It went into negative status in August of last year. And granted, we didn't bill every 30 days. He received his first bill in October of last year. He received another one in January, another one.
and was that on
February.
the grading permit or the?
That was the grading permit. That was the grading permit. It went negative in August of last year, and he received his first bill in October. And then another one in January, another one in February. So that is, I just wanted to make some clarification on that. And we have not had any contact with the Rice Company.
Can I add a different avenue of this? And that would be the PR piece. And that's tough to quantify, and it's easy, it could be easy to say, no matter what, the city's name is gonna be dragged through the mud in the community
One
of
way or
saying,
the other.
we're difficult to work with, we cost Warren tens of thousands of dollars and all these different things, and now we're suing them because the project didn't get done. That is the that is the message that will be spread throughout the community. Our question, I mean, I think that is something that we have to be aware of and account for, and to some extent factor in our decision. Now, it might not be the biggest thing to be aware of, but it's something to be aware of.
Trish?
Might I throw in another different PR story that could be out there? So, you can go to Elko Newmarket, you don't have to pay your bills, it's great. You can not develop a project and they'll let you ride. That's a great PR story too.
We're trying to attract developers.
So right, so
It's a double-edged sword.
I'm kidding, but yes.
I know, but the point, yes, I get your point.
Which one would hurt bringing developers in more? That's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
and which one hurts our citizens more who pay the bills?
It's a good
So
point.
Bottom
where,
line.
right, and where would this $8,768 fall if we decided that we're not gonna go after him? And what fund is this gonna come out of then?
Corey's gonna save us $8,000.
We would basically apply it back to our regular line items within the budget for the respective billing entities, so it's primarily gonna be engineering and legal associated with the reviews of the application, and so we just code those bills back to the general
and
professional
I
services.
think we've got a majority, I think there's a 3-2 thing going on right here, so if you call for a vote, we probably can just be done.
Sounds like you're done discussing.
I'm not sure
I'm
that's,
done. I've said what I need to.
it could be 3-2.
It doesn't-
Could be 3-2 either way.
Well, if you'd like a motion, Mayor, you can
No,
call
but-
for one to a roll.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll motion it.
That we go after, pursue the legal action? Now,
Sure, let's do that, and then it'll
Going
be
after-
declined, and then we'll be good, and we'll be done.
Are you going after all of these?
No, not just Warren.
You going after just Warren?
Yep,
Instead of just laying it on the table, we're just gonna be done, okay?
I just think we need to make a decision. I mean, why,
I
if we're
agree.
talking about spending time and resources, let's just be done discussing it. I mean, we all have our opinions, so.
do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye, sorry.
All opposed?
Nay.
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 There we go. Done. Okay. I can give in.
Your points are very well stated, and I agree with you in a lot of them.
Okay.
It's,
I just think it's a losing battle besides
Bolton, yeah.
going
There's
after
a reason to
one.
give up.
Okay, we got the last item.
Last item is the engineering services agreement. Staff has
Actually,
provided a
really
copy of the
good.
agreement and a report with the background on it, so we would stand for questions.
The only question I had was where, is there something in there that, because that's one of the things I remember when we passed it that I asked to be in there, something that protects us
Right,
from
and it
that.
doesn't specifically state that exactly. There's general language that I believe covers the situation, and that would be the language that Josh pointed out, which would be section
Well,
1B.
see, and I did, what happened last time didn't clearly define, if you're the project manager and something gets done like that, who is responsible? I mean, they signed off on getting these projects done.
So you're not gonna have, so Mr. Mayor, I don't think you can have a contract that can say that in every instance that's the case. You're gonna have the circumstances related to every item. If you believe that they're responsible, you can pursue it. In the case, and you're referring to the well through
Right.
item, in that case, the city chose to work it out through agreement, how that would be handled. The city could have chosen litigation to pursue it, or we could have chosen to utilize mediation or other means. We chose to work it out through one-on-one, basically through negotiation. That's how, quite honestly, that's what would happen if it happened again. The agreement does provide that certain responsibilities on both parties, but sometimes that responsibility is a matter of opinion. And then if you disagree on that, you end up in court or through some other form of mediation. I don't know how you would draft the language that you are looking for and to provide language for a very specific instance. I still think you would still have a matter of opinion given another situation, still who's at fault.
The consultant will give prompt notice to the client whenever the consultant observes or otherwise becomes aware of any defect related to services or projects in which the consultant was involved, so they're gonna notify us.
Which in this last
The
instance they
consultant
did.
shall be responsible for the accuracy of the services provided made under this agreement and shall promptly make necessary revisions and corrections resulting from errors and omissions on the part of the consultant without additional compensation. I don't know what else you would say.
We ended up paying $130,000 for something we did not authorize.
But I believe through the discussions, it was something we were going to, it was something that was needed. It happened sooner than it was supposed to. And I believe there was an agreement between the city and the engineering firm that that was an agreeable path to take.
That was a unanimous vote by.
Correct.
And that we,
Yeah, this was on
Correct.
us.
So we can rehash this well thing to death, but we all made a decision at the time of how to resolve that, and we
Well,
did.
and I said at that time that I wanted to make sure if we do another contract with somebody, that we make sure we're protected, especially,
And we are protected, and we were protected then. We made a choice as to how we resolved that situation. We could have taken legal action. We could have done something different. We chose not to, correct?
So the reality is you can put whatever you want in a contract, but there's still interpretation and opinions
Correct.
to whether it applies and applies. So you can say they are responsible in these circumstances.
But as soon
you
as
can
you get
disagree on
into listing
circumstances.
specific circumstances, now you've opened yourself up to potentially bigger issues.
But it is, so what you
I-
do
good
in
Yes.
most contracts is you provide for a mechanism to resolve disputes
Correct.
related to the contract. And I think this reasonably does that. And that provides protection as much as anything else will. I think we have the advantage that the firm we're working with has a history of working with the city when there have been issues. And the fact that the council agreed to something with a unanimous vote as an acceptable solution tells me it must have been an acceptable solution to the council. And I guess I'd ask the city attorney, so if there is a situation where we can't come to agreement with the consultant, do we have sufficient language in there to be able to support a claim, let's say if we needed to pursue litigation or mediation or some other form of
Yes,
arbitration? Okay.
yes.
That
It
answers
says
the
right here,
question.
if mediation is unsuccessful in resolving the dispute, then either party may seek to have the dispute resolved by bringing an action in a court of competent jurisdiction.
So I had a different concern, and this was, I don't know, might be a minor deal, might be a bigger deal, I don't know. But in looking at the language, and I appreciate Bolton and Mank's concession on some of on the rates, on the hourly rates for yourself and for, is it Sarah? Sarah. It's the 4% annual increase, or annual adjustment, but I think we could probably all agree that's likely an increase, right?
Yeah, 4%.
That was our intention.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
asked, the idea
It's
was
gonna scale up.
to have something that's plannable, I think was,
So-
and actually, Tom, you could speak to that.
So if that rate, well, you answer my question. And so if that rate were to go up 4% a year, we're actually gonna be paying money in just a matter of paying more money in a matter of 2
No,
years.
it gets capped at
It
your
gets
cap,
capped at
doesn't it?
It would get capped at whatever my
your
going rate. for
billing
other
rate of
clients.
178.
Right.
But that would be, so is the cap for a particular project, or how does that work? Because it may be,
What-
just, you could simplify by just explain how the cost savings of $68,000 works.
So my current rate that I bill most clients is 178 per
Okay.
hour. We're proposing for you 165, so it would be all these, the meetings that we don't charge for, add that all up, and then an estimate of the time. I think I use 1,000 hours billed to city projects at that reduced rate. And then some estimate for Sarah, although she hasn't had a lot of billed time. We haven't charged you for almost anything she did
Sure.
in the meetings. So it's those, primarily the free meetings and the reduced rate for roughly 1,000 hours a year,
But the rate would go up could potentially go up 4% annually,
Annually.
correct?
annually.
Is
And-
it
and how-
monthly or was it?
But not to exceed what I charge, what we normally charge other clients for my
it
time.
is
I got you,
4%
okay. So what is the mechanism for determining whether it's 4%? Or did you just state that it is just
4%.
flat
It's
4%?
gonna be,
Okay.
the rates will go up 4% annually, but not to exceed their increased rate. So really, the difference between paying full rate is gonna be how quickly that regular rate goes up relative to that 4%. So if the regular rate goes up
I see, okay.
2% per year, and this is increasing 4% per year,
We're only
it's really,
2%.
So we're kind of getting a front end
Second year,
benefit.
Yeah.
we're getting a front-end benefit.
Yep.
If you were to carry this out perpetually, at some point, we would catch up to the normal rates.
Yeah, okay.
But to keep in mind is this is a 3-year contract, and at the end of the 3 years, we have the option to extend the contract or renegotiate the terms of the contract. This was something that we felt was appropriate. Their proposal contained the higher rate, and when we looked at the overall comparison, and again, it was a little bit of there were some assumptions in the analysis.
Yep.
The total assumptions related to services, BMI came out in total, consistent with the other top firms out of the proposal. They were right in the pack. This improves that position with regards to that rate structure for at least the majority of the term of the current contract that we're talking about.
And I'm supportive of it. I just wanted to make sure I understood that because
No, but you're absolutely right. If you carry that out perpetually into the future, at some point, at 4%, that's going to exceed any, over time, probably whatever the regular structure increases for BMI, and you'd eventually
So market
catch up.
forces will help, controls, so it may protect you if the market takes off and rates go sky high, you're protected for under the 4%. If they stay flat, then
We're
we'll
catching
catch
up.
up.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't need to argue any further.
Do I,
Motion to approve?
Second.
or do you have something?
Oh, sorry.
Minor details, and it says,
Go.
I'm reading through it, I catch little stupid things. Client on page 6, part 2 is not all caps, and I don't know if it matters or not. So
Oh.
client is not all caps.
I'm changing my vote.
And page 6, part 2, I don't know if it matters or not, but I caught those
It
things.
doesn't, but
Okay. And consultant on page 9, part X.
No
does
exception
not.
taken to that change on our part.
And I guess,
Change out those pages, Rich.
have your meetings always been at no cost, or is this new for this contract?
We've pretty much, there is a caveat, if I'm here to present on a project, and there's time for that, that portion of the meeting will be billed. if it's billable to a project.
But
So
sitting
we
here
need-
is
But
not.
sitting here for general business that I'm not, I might weigh in or make a joke, I'm not billing you for that.
You're doing pro bono.
And that-
Thank goodness, 'cause man, those would be the most
There might
expensive
be a bill
jokes
heading
ever.
back to you. for
I
certain.
should charge extra.
We should charge you. Quality of the
But,
job.
no, that's been longstanding.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do I,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're down to, I believe, administration.
So we have one discussion item under administration tonight. This would be a discussion regarding legal services, request for proposals. The council had given broad direction about a year ago that we were going to start moving through, and since we had not gone out for proposals on our core consulting services in over 9 years, that we would do so, and it kind of provided direction and change of practice that we would evaluate at least every 3 years, but every 9 years, if we have at least every 9 years, we would go out for requests for proposals. So if you kind of look across the board of where we spend the most resources, et cetera, number one would be engineering, number two would be legal. So that's the next one on the list. Since we're wrapping up engineering tonight, I thought it was appropriate to start the legal process. Mark has been working in the background on the RFP. We would wait to finish that out based on further direction from the council. Similar to the direction they provided on, this is kind of what we're looking for out of an engineering firm. We would like similar feedback on, this is what we'd be looking for out of a legal firm, so that if we necessary, we can make adjustments to the RFP and we can make adjustments to the evaluation form that we use for evaluating those proposals. Lastly, after we get that feedback, we would recommend that the council appoint 2 members of the council to sit on the selection committee that would make a recommendation to the council related to the legal firm, similar to what we did with engineering.
So one question I have, our, it's Northwestern something, I'm blanking on the name of our,
NAC,
thank you. I will just go with
Northwest
NAC.
Associated Consultants.
Yeah, there you go. How much do we spend on them versus legal services ballpark?
In the past, it was comparable when they were providing our core planning services before we had the community development specialist.
Okay.
Right now, we do have them budgeted for a certain amount of hours, simply to provide workload peaking and specialized expertise to assist Renee in her duties. And we had project work like the comp plan. Once the comp plan is completed, the amount we budget for them is going to drop significantly.
Okay.
And to be perfectly honest, the reason we retain them at this point is because they are familiar with the community, they are familiar with the background, but we're really, at that point, using them for, we need extra bandwidth and community development, and so Renee can feed them work on an as-needed basis. So at this point, given their revised role, I would not call them at this point a core consultant anymore.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend going out for RFPs for those services at this point in time.
No.
I would suggest, though, after we do with legal, we go out for auditor. There's another one. We have never gone out for proposals for auditor. We've been using the same auditor for a couple of decades. And I think it would be reasonable to do that. And then after that, I would suggest that we go out for financial advisor services.
Oh, so NAC is not on your radar really at all?
The amount that we use in the reason that we're retaining them, and would be using them for workload peaking, is specifically related to their knowledge of the community at this particular point in time. I think that's more of just a straight up business decision. If it's something where they're providing supplemental services, not core services. If the council thinks that we should do that anyways for firms providing supplemental services, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, when I go to planning commission meetings, and the reason I bring it up, and I don't mean to pick on Kermis, he's a nice guy, but he really does not seem to really engage. I don't know. It feels like we don't get a lot of value from him, but that's just what I'm seeing.
So in the current meetings, Bob's providing us a resource. We've had discussions. He will not be attending meetings much in the future as Renee is becoming more familiar with the background or dealing with items that Bob had involved in the development of it, unless he has a specific application that's been assigned to him. So he'll be phasing out as far as participation.
He's been helping with the preparation of meeting minutes and taking notes and stuff, which is hard to do sometimes when you're the presenter. extremely helpful for me in capacity. I try not to give him any regular work to the degree possible because I just don't like to pay consulting fees.
Right.
I think with the comp plan, I think we needed that extra bandwidth.
I
And he's been doing our comp plans all along, so this year, we knew it was gonna be a lot more money.
Yeah,
So
no,
you-
I agree with all that, I just, if I had to look at consultants or who we bring in, I mean, that was kind of one that I had in my sights, so. But I'm not opposed to going after legal services, and again, I think it's, just good government to continually go after, yeah.
Okay, so anybody have anything specific that we're looking for in legal services?
I would say if they're
Competencies on what's good. Well, so that's a given. So
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna write that down.
How about a degree? No, I'm just kidding.
Pass the bar.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Passed the bar the first time? No, I'm just kidding.
so, for example, the bandwidth or such, so when we talk about engineering, one of the discussions is we're looking for a firm that provides certain levels of specialities, similar to the city engineering services we had, where a lot of the stuff could be in-house and didn't have to go up for consultants. So there's different types of engineering firms. You probably have at one end of the spectrum, Kennedy and Graven, who has a huge municipal division, bond sales, they do everything. But they also have a whole portion of the firm that does private sector stuff all across the spectrum as too. They're a massive firm, but they're well respected and they have quite a bit of depth just in the municipal arena. All the way down to Gavin Olson Sabri worked with Nordic America, which is basically two partners, and they did everything from Mrs. Johnson's will to serving as city attorneys for smaller communities in the area. They're more of a generalist shop. That was just one of the many things that they did, and by no means was the majority of their business.
I mean, I think of the stuff that we're gonna be dealing with, we're gonna be dealing with annexation, zoning changes, building permit stuff. I mean, the type of growth and development, so, they have to have knowledge, expertise, whatever. I mean, that's gonna be one of the biggest things that we work with.
And I think we will have a lot of other land issues, so I think they should have some depth in land issues. And I just remember this last year, we had to go out for specialists, for attorneys for certain areas.
Sure.
And I know there's some firms that cover that too, but their basic rate is probably a little higher. I'm not sure, but depends on which attorney you get.
In that circumstance, I don't know of any other city that's probably, very few cities have ended up in that particular.
No, right.
But I've worked with Kennedy and Graven, I've worked with Campbell Knudsen, I've worked with smaller firms on both sides that have municipal experience. I can tell you that there is a significant difference with regards to the services that you are provided with a larger firm that either has a specialized municipal division or specializes in municipal.
Just out of curiosity, I haven't checked, but is Dorsey and Whitney another one that does city? No?
They did a number of years ago, I think they had one attorney that did some of that, but I think we took over Edina when that individual left the city.
The only reason I asked is because they're doing all this stuff for ULI, and it's like, they must have some connection to cities, but,
I think they do some bond work.
Dorsey and Whitney does bond work.
okay.
In fact, they do our bond work.
Similar to the engineering stuff, I think we need to have somebody that has familiarity with our city and that kind of stuff is gonna be valuable, so that relationship, that knowledge, I think that is very valuable.
In the packet, it did have a brief little, attend city council meetings, drafting ordinances and resolutions, advising on laws related to governing cities. I think basically, I would say if they fit into that section of our notes in here, I think we'd be good.
Have a really, really good knowledge of ordinances and writing ordinances. And
Sounds like a lot of that's already somewhat incorporated in the
Right.
questions that staff has proposed. I wouldn't have any changes. I think would be good to have a couple different council people to sit down and interview.
Well,
process.
and I think part of it is where do we want the attorney to be in that firm? I mean, who's going to be from that firm. I think that's gonna make a huge difference.
So that's a big question too. As we talked about, are you looking for, and it will have an impact on rates. It'll also have an impact on your service. Are you looking for a junior associate, or are you looking for a managing partner? I mean, what are you looking for in the firm as far as level of experience? Are you looking for somebody who's more on the experienced end of the spectrum, or are you looking for somebody who's still learning the game a little bit?
I would rather not have somebody that's still green under the collar. I guess I would prefer to have somebody that has more experience, whether that's a managing partner or if it's just another attorney. I don't know what the different ranks are for attorneys.
So no interns?
No interns.
Okay,
So ultimately, the proposal, there will be a value proposition,
yeah.
but when we're talking with potential firms, because we will get inquiries as they'll come down, they'll meet with us, what are we looking for? It's nice to have that kind of feedback. So when they're preparing the proposal, they're trying as best they can to match what we're looking for.
I don't think we should guide them. I think they should just tell us what they're gonna provide us.
Yeah, what they would recommend.
I mean, why guide them and give them, that's like,
Yeah,
hey, here's the answers to the test.
But hopefully they would
Make
bring
your-
their
make your
best foot
proposal-
forward.
Right.
So let's get back to maybe the biggest determinant. Are we looking for a firm that specializes or has a specialized division, large enough to have a specialized division in municipal, or are we just doing any firm that does municipal work?
I think there's probably good people in both, and bad people in both.
Can we put it out to anyone and then weed it down to
How many would we
our
get?
final candidates?
It's hard, it is hard to say, but there are a lot of firms out there that do or think they do municipal work. It really comes down to how far they want to drive. I can't give a prediction on how many firms we could get. It could be anywhere from just a handful, like 5 or 6, all the way up to we could get tens.
I would think any firm that does municipal law knows that their check gets funded by the taxpayers, and sending in a partner that's gonna charge $4.50 an hour or something is just not gonna happen. So I don't know that we need to go too far in specifying, what level they are in the firm, but have some relevant experience in municipal law and resources with with various partners. I'd be interested.
I guess I'm just sitting here thinking, everything that we were looking for in an engineer, while the skill sets are different, aren't we really looking for a similar set of attributes? We talked about familiar, look at what we look for in our engineer. Familiarity with our city, cost value, level of experience in the fields that we're working. I mean, isn't it sort of the same thing?
I think it's the same, but it's different because the laws and ordinances, the way they're applied, are applied the same in every city once you have read the ordinance. I mean, and the way they're written isn't written any different unless the council wants it to be written different. I mean, so legal is just a little different. Rich's experience, he knows what's where and the soil conditions here and there and.
I might disagree with
Yeah,
that.
I
I mean,
disagree
law
with
is the opposite of black and white. It's about interpreting what's written in acting in a certain way. So I think it's really different from an engineering standpoint. I think
Well, that's
just
what
from
I
a generally.
think it's a lot different. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Is it's a lot different because law
I thought you
is
were
more
arguing differently.
set. Engineering, he has to have a lot of background information on the community. Law, you don't need that much background information on the community to apply your ordinances.
Well,
It's more than just ordinances.
So I think we're venturing into evaluating proposals which we
Yeah.
don't have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we are.
Because let's face it, Campbell Knudsen's been here for 20-plus years as a firm. Nobody else is gonna have a lot of background knowledge on the legal aspects of the
Right.
community.
Well, that
So-
actually, very true.
So
But not of our community. I guess what I was more saying is communities, I guess I'm just
Such
talking.
as
Smaller
science,
communities.
including
Yeah, small
redeveloping and
communities,
fast-growing
like-
suburban communities, rural cities, and townships.
Yeah.
I mean, or thereabouts.
So you're looking
There
for
you go.
somebody that has,
Yes,
so you're
very
looking
good.
for somebody that has experience
God, where do you
that's
find
gonna be
that
specific to a
information?
community of our style.
And,
Correct.
and the fact that we're gonna be bursting, hopefully bursting with growth, right? That, somebody who really can quickly talk about zoning and PUDs and all of those things and annexations. And when you start thinking about what are the things we're coming up on, we want an attorney that doesn't have to go talk to 10 people to
To make a
figure out an
decision.
answer to our question, right? Because that just is more money. Versus if they have a good sound knowledge base, in theory, it's more better. No.
So
So we didn't give you a lot of direction.
I'm
Yeah,
not
what-
exactly sure, so I'm gonna, if I can ask a few questions and just get some
I think that's a
That's
good
such a
idea.
good idea.
Yeah, Tom, why don't you tell us
Okay,
what we should
So,
say? And
one, are you looking exclusively for firms, because this is kind of the weeding out part, are you looking for a firm that does a significant amount of municipal?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
that was clear.
okay, so we're not looking for a generalist firm
No.
or a smaller firm that has a limited amount of municipal clientele.
That'd be correct.
And I think we're also looking for a firm that would have a regular attorney and at least one backup that would fill in when they
So-
weren't available.
So in their proposal, they need to
That's
provide us with their team, and they need to have some, just as we have Sarah as the assistant engineer, there has to be the backup attorney, okay?
I would assume they would provide references of the
Yeah.
cities they work in.
Yeah, we're looking for firms that match our needs. What I'm hearing is we're looking for a firm an individual that's well-versed in development law and development contracts, stuff related to development, broadly stated. One thing I would also suggest is a firm that has capacity with regards to employment law, because as we continue to grow as a city, that is an aspect.
Yes.
And we do have legal needs in those areas, or likely will in the future as we continue to grow. We're primarily a people organization. Other things that you're looking for, demeanor, temperament, what are you looking for from, because there's different types of attorneys. There's bulldog attorneys, there's problem solver attorneys, there's pacifier. I mean, so what do you want from your attorney? What kind of advice? Do you want somebody who's going to be aggressive and keep you out of trouble? Or are you looking for somebody that's going to be, because and attorney firms can adjust,
I don't know
but
if
generally
we
what are you
need a
looking for?
bulldog.
Well, I don't know that aggressive is the right term, but we certainly want somebody proactively
Right.
Telling us.
thinking about, aware of what we're doing and actually keeping their, stop us from being
Yeah.
idiots. I mean,
Right.
that's,
I respect consultants that are not afraid to offer their opinion.
absolutely.
And there are certain consultants that will just, stay right in the middle and don't want to ruffle any feathers and really end up providing very little value other than just interpreting the law. Someone that can interact well with the public, and someone that is not afraid to offer their opinion and provide the city recommendations, not just in the most conservative sense. That probably gives you nothing for direction, but
No,
that's
that's
kind of what
actually,
I'm looking for.
that's actually the kind of direction, feedback I was seeking. Does everybody generally agree with that?
Somebody that's gonna tell us if we're making a mistake or shouldn't be doing something.
And I just think that's their job, but absolutely.
Yeah.
I
it's-
mean, yeah.
Somebody's afraid of playing without a net, safety net. They come and they're going to tell us what we need to hear, whether we want to hear it or not. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Whether we want to hear it or not.
Yes.
Somebody that has people skills and has the ability to interact with both the general public, council, development folks. Because I have worked with attorneys over the year that were phenomenal attorneys. And if I was in litigation, I would love to have them on my side. They're not really warm and fuzzy. I mean,
They're not good for negotiation.
they're not good for negotiation. What I'm hearing is if you had to put an emphasis, you would put the emphasis on the person who has the people skills part of it with regards to.
For an example, I would call out the former township lawyer.
Bob Rupee?
Yeah, that would be an example of someone I would have zero interest in. So, if that gives you anything, yeah.
Any other characteristics that you'd be looking
Well, the only other type, and I don't know how to even word it without just, they don't have their own agenda, or so it's kind of almost counterintuitive to that. They're going to follow the direction of the council, because you see city attorneys like West St. Paul who got their city into legal trouble by purposely allowing the staff to drive the agendas for certain things. And I don't know how to word it that way,
So,
but
well, the best attorneys, in my opinion, are the ones who try not to make, who try to do the opposite of finding work for themselves. They keep you out of trouble.
So that they don't
They don't
have
do it.
litigation.
I
They don't
have
have.
seen attorneys who consulted for private sector individuals that sat across from us in my municipal work, and also represented other jurisdictions who actually fanned the fires and actually created more.
Well, there's a fine line there. I mean, I want, attorneys just, and this is probably an unfair categorization of them, but they tend to push you towards the conservative, you know, be safe, be safe, be safe, which is fine. Maybe this is contrary to your point a little bit, Josh, but I want someone to say, you know, you're probably safe in making this decision. Yeah, I think from my legal opinion is, yes, you should pursue this legal action, rather than just constantly go with, hey, there's a net behind us and we're just gonna be super safe all the time.
I'm gonna go back to when we were doing not the annexation, but the trail project, and taking the eminent domain, and we got real hard information of what the likelihoods were. I like that.
I agree.
That's what I'm looking for, is give us the real information. What are the likelihoods that we can, where we will probably come out?
And let us decide.
And let us decide. Give us the chances, you know, let us decide what the risk is that we're willing to take.
It's a good take, I agree with you.
That's my example, and I think we got good advice that time.
So, last question. 2 representatives to sit on the committee.
I would love to sit on it.
are the meetings gonna be at 10 o'clock in the morning during the workday? I mean,
We will
'cause,
we'll schedule it based on the availability of the individuals. If it's like engineering, the initial work will be, for instance, the rating sheet and that type of stuff will be circulated via email for feedback.
Do on your own time.
At some point, we'll have to schedule, when we start having to get the proposals back, we will have to schedule a meeting to review the results of the ranking sheets from the group and reach consensus on identifying who's going to move on in the process and what those steps are. That can be worked around whoever's on the committee and their schedules.
I mean, I'd love to be a part of it. I haven't been able to be a part of anything. I'm 5 weeks into my new job now, so I'm past that.
Now you can take the time.
Right.
So Kate and Josh? Is that okay with everybody?
Works good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing for Public Works this month? I can't remember.
There was a report.
The report, but any questions on it?
No,
Okay.
saw them out there doing stripes, painting.
Let's see, police?
The only thing I have to add is interviews tomorrow for second round for the officer.
Yeah, 9:30,
Unfortunately,
right?
I just found out today that we're down to 2 instead of 3.
Aw.
One accepted a job in Apple Valley, so keeping our fingers crossed, because if it doesn't happen tomorrow, we start all over.
Any leads on the fish rock?
No, outside, I have my feelings that it's somebody that knows something about the store.
Okay.
Since that one. We did send out, in case you guys here, we did send out a Metro Light crime alert to see if we can't get him ID from photos. Scott County has a crime analyst that's, you know, at our disposal, so I sent all the information up to Laura, and she puts the crime alert together and sends it out. So it was great. Took me about 5 minutes to send her information that makes it look like she spent 3 hours on it. So
You said 1:30 tomorrow for the?
1:30 tomorrow.
And so the one that canceled wasn't the first one?
No,
last one.
Last one.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, I know it is, but
No, it's not good.
you know, you heard it earlier during the work session about firefighter retention and recruitment, and Law enforcement's no different.
Right.
I mean, good for the one candidate, he got offered a job, I get that, but I mean, you know, to only have 3 coming to the second round, and, you know, well, a couple of council, mayor and councilman were there the first time, and after the second round interviews, it's like, no way, there's just nobody there. And I won't move forward with somebody unless they're there. I just won't fill a spot, so we have to start over again, I mean, it's gonna put us quite a bit behind. We'll see, I mean, we got hopefully 2 quality candidates tomorrow, and hopefully we can make a decision with one of them,
At this rate, we may not get your officer till next year.
Saving money.
Hmm?
You're saving money. How are your legs? I mean, you're able to walk all right? You're moving slower, quicker?
Okay, 2 things. Smarty. One, oh, by the way, we did do our active shooter training at school today.
So you better run fast.
We had a couple new training officers that joined us. It was excellent training. The training officer that came over and trained us is very versed in this. He's on a SWAT team for Edinburgh PD. He came over and trained us and for free. So
Oh, awesome.
Wow.
great training. So my legs have been in motion all day long. So right now they're pretty tired after about 15 hours today. But the next race, we're gonna have a little roll reversal.
You're gonna wear the
uniform.
Long pants, belt.
Yeah, he's gonna put the
They're
vest on.
really gonna have
He's
some
gonna
explaining
use
to do when I
I hate to tell you this, Josh, he's already told me he's using the old style vest that
Just wondering on the one drug arrest that was the felony level, are we getting any vehicle? No forfeiture?
No, it's not the owner's, well, I shouldn't say that, it's being held, but.
But unlikely.
Very unlikely, because, the person arrested, it wasn't his vehicle. Innocent owner is
Okay.
huge, and it's really tough to.
Okay, no, that's,
But 201 grams?
201 grams is
Just
a lot of
under
marijuana.
what does that
It was a
equate
very good
to?
arrest.
Can you put that to ounces for
7
me,
pounds.
please?
Or 7 ounces, I mean. Just
Yeah.
under.
So it's half a
Yeah.
pound.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not wrong, yeah.
I mean,
Which
is that intent to distribute?
Well, you got that
No,
amount.
because generally speaking, you
Get
need
a
some
packaging.
other stuff, you have to have.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Baggies or a
Beyond
just the
scale
size
or
then.
a,
Yeah, this was, I mean, he told the officer it was personal use. No.
he's in a lot of pain.
But, yeah, he just didn't have anything, there wasn't any.
There's no
kind of
scale, he didn't have a
evidence
scale or
for
anything.
Distribution, otherwise he would get charged with that.
I'm just curious.
I know a guy that used to buy that much.
It's a lot of money.
Is that a lot of money?
Well, don't drugs cost a lot?
I don't know. How
Half
much,
a pound,
how much
I
does
mean-
it cost, Trish? I don't know.
I have no idea.
This is where the
Okay,
city attorney
back-
needs to step
no,
up
wait.
and say, as your attorney, I'm advising you.
Just stop talking.
But just out of curiosity, Steve, what's the approximate street value of the amount that was taken into possession?
I was gonna say, back when I worked in narcotics,
Jeez.
20 years
Depends on the
ago,
number.
It's, no.
it depend on the
Well, I mean,
quality
are you
and-
breaking it down?
Yeah, I mean, you're, I'd say thousands of dollars.
Wow, that's crazy.
So what- And you're right, and this was, let me put it this way, this goes back into the PD remodel too, where we need a vent fan in the evidence room and that.
Oh, good gravy.
Oh,
So we have evidence lockers. When I walked in
I'm sorry.
the next morning,
Want to borrow
as
Super
soon
Troopers
as I
again?
walked in, I knew we had evidence.
Sure.
Put it that way,
Uh-huh.
without, you know,
Oh.
because the officers will usually write on the whiteboard evidence and evidence locker number.
Right,
I didn't have to look at that.
right.
And I turned and I looked at Melissa, it was Josh that made the rest, he's the sister. I turned and looked at Melissa and I said, apparently I have evidence to put away. Yeah.
I'll wait till after
Yeah,
we're off record.
it was a good rest. Good job, buddy. Good
Awesome.
job, buddy, Josh.
So how much is gonna, never mind.
I just am always amazed at criminal, like, getting caught with a felony because of a traffic stop. Like, what are you thinking?
I
Had to smell
I know
something.
I have
Smell
said this
something, yeah.
at many meetings.
Why would you be
that
speeding?
That's
You're
what
stupid.
happens.
because you're high.
People with warrants, if they've got a revoked driver's license or something like that, their taillights out.
Right.
That's why they got stopped.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry, that's a digression,
No,
it amazes me. Okay.
So, any other questions?
No.
Otherwise, I'm going home.
Adios.
So I can rest up and be ready for interviews. 2 now.
1:30.
Yes.
Pick a day.
Pick a day? I will. Or wait till,
He's
see
still
it like
looking.
some August meeting.
Can we
when
do it
temps
at the
are supposed to be
parade?
How about the fire rescue day?
How about the
High
parade?
humidity,
How about,
Parade.
how about night tea and night?
No, I won't be there.
well, no, because I have to be in uniform.
Yeah.
At 19
you'll
night,
be
he's
in
saying
uniform.
Josh is gonna wear the uniform.
Oh.
Yeah.
And besides, he has to find one of those old vests.
He's gonna be tripping on your pants.
Well, he doesn't have to wear my pants.
I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Somebody
For his
does.
pants.
Oh, see, now people really
gonna
should
pull
watch
the
our council
John,
meeting tonight. This
Friends
was a
thing.
good one.
No.
No, the vest, the gun belt, boots.
You're gonna give him your gun?
Okay.
Oh, no.
Even if you're
There'll
out
be
running.
some items that won't be on the gun belt. so-
Okay, I was just wondering, because if you're gonna.
Yeah,
give him
We can
your
just
gun-
put
sure not the
rocks in those
taser.
areas.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you, Steve.
I have a story for you, though, off record when we're, just ask me about my days working in the narcotics division, okay? And the vault there.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Fire department, engineering.
The only thing is I've asked Sarah to put on her calendar the July 12th council meeting to attend on my behalf. So I'm just letting you know if I absolutely need to be here, I can. But I have a personal conflict that I'm excited about, so I asked her to attend. And same for you, Tom, if there's something that comes up where I need to be here, just let me know so I can work it out ahead of time. But otherwise, I would plan with Sarah on the 12th of July.
Okay.
She'll probably do fine.
I think so.
She has to come with a joke.
I'll
Better
let her
than
know.
yours.
She has to
That
come
won't
with
be
a
hard.
good joke.
All right, I won't tell her anything.
Community development.
Don't have any updates other than what was in my report, if you have any questions.
I don't know how to even ask this, but is there any holdup on Christmas Pines that you're aware of?
Yes.
Okay. Is that anything that can be discussed?
Yes.
Thank you.
We were contacted by the owner of Christmas Pines, who said they were very much struggling with trying to fill a gap in the project financing. We have been working hard internally to try to see what we can do to fill that gap and help them out, and it does involve Rich and Tom and I and Corey, and we have some suggestions. I have left I've left Mr. Tippy an email and a voice message. I'm waiting for him to call me back so we can discuss this further.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, parks, any questions on parks? I guess the new equipment should be ready by Monday.
Yeah.
My neighbor's happy. Okay, other board reports, scale. We had social media expert, what's his first name? John Rash?
Yes.
From several places he works for. He gave a good presentation on social media and how to work social media and how cities should take care of that. And I think, listening to him, our city does a pretty good job. MBTA is not till
End of month.
end of the month. I-35 Solutions.
Just some brief updates. Actually, Tom attended this morning because there were one of the topics of discussions, and we wanted to be sure that we had enough support for moving the review of projects that we have on our list of priorities. It hasn't been done for, right, so it's been a long time. And so we wanted to be sure that we were vocal because it's definitely something that needs to be done. It was shown out in the meeting that, you know, if you look at the list of what we had, it's all been done or is funded to be done. So clearly a new list needs to be made, and we wanted to support it simply because we'd like to make sure that we have a voice and get maybe some of our projects onto the priority list. So that was approved, which is good. The construction, just a really quick recap, because I don't know, well, does anybody want to recap on the 35W construction? Do you care at all? Not really? Okay, moving on then. Let's see, Orange Line, the FTA readiness risk assessment's been done, the I-35 bridge over the river. I think you saw that the contract was awarded. They're gonna keep 3 lanes open both ways, I think is what was being said. So, Green Line, the agreement between the Met Council and Hennepin County has been completed. So that basically is ensuring that the local funding was going to be there to move the project ahead. Federal transportation update is they're working on the 2019 appropriation budget. And I do have a legislative update that Tom, right. The only note that I had on mine that won't be on what you get is that this was the close of the 90th session since we became a state. And I thought that was fascinating, so I made a note. That is all.
Regional Council of Maine, or Chamber of Commerce.
June 22nd coming up is the golf tournament, and I don't know much about it. I'll be honest. I honestly don't even know how many teams are signed up for it, so.
Isn't that a nice feeling? Yeah, you don't have all that work on your shoulders this year.
I just have a question, it's business related, so I figured it fell here kind of. Why do we still have businesses, prominent businesses in our community that we really love and appreciate, still putting up signs that say downtown Newmarket and perpetuating the distinction of 2 cities and I mean, I wanted to take down every one of those Firefly things and put a little note on there that says Elko Newmarket. I mean, and I love the coffee shop and I love everything about it, but it's just like, can we
It's a very good point.
Stop doing that?
It's a very good point.
And I don't know.
It fits better.
If it's better.
I know it fits better, but then
But
it's just
It's kind of like they consider an Elko neighborhood now and a Newmarket neighborhood, and this is the downtown.
But
I think
Josh's point is that
we're trying to
we
make it 10-year anniversary.
the separation is still there.
Yeah, it's still being enabled, pushed by the businesses.
Did you-
A business, I'm not saying all.
Would you like that brought up at the next
I mean,
meeting?
it's something to be talked about, I mean, and I get it. You know, to even say downtown Elko Newmarket, you're gonna have people in Elko pissed.
You could just do downtown E&M, and then you're
I
not,
don't know. It struck me as,
Or just
there we go
downtown.
again.
Just
Just
downtown,
downtown.
there is no really other downtown,
right.
just point blank.
I will address that at the next meeting, I'll bring it up.
Still people in the city of Elko that consider that downtown Elko.
Then they'll not find it there and they'll know to go.
Coming.
I don't know.
Elsewhere.
I have no idea. I couldn't make the one a month ago.
Okay.
I was at the one on Tuesday.
I don't know when the next one is and what time, and it's
It's
just.
the second Tuesday of every month.
And it's now at,
They what? It's the next one, and then the next one after
August.
that, so it would be August.
Which gives me even more time in the current job, for more time to slack off.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. I
Yeah,
will make
because
certain that we get you invited to the
And
August
I'll
one.
talk to Rick and them too when we're
Okay.
there running on Saturday. I mean, I'm not opposed, I was just bringing it up as
the
a
meeting's
discussion.
9 to 11 now
Yep.
at Newmarket Bank.
Yep.
Kate, did they talk about a date for the state of the city? Rick had indicated that was going to be discussed at the meeting on Tuesday.
I was not there. Yeah. I
Okay,
was
so
not
we are working
able
on that
to
date. We
attend
haven't.
Did you give dates that would work for you? Because it's all a matter of when it's gonna work for you.
I did, so
Okay.
I think I just need to get it confirmed out with Rick. I think they narrowed it down to 2. I think we just need to get it narrowed down to the 1.
Okay.
We have to check on availability at the, Rick was gonna check on availability at the library for a couple of the options that were out there. We're just really waiting for the chamber to say.
So you wanna do it at the library again?
That was what I was told that the chamber wanted to do.
Oh, I'd like to do it at Firefly.
Okay, I'll ask about that, because last I knew we wanted it at Firefly again, because we appreciated this, you know,
The-
the
That was great.
quaintness and
Yeah,
the-
it's just comfortable.
Yeah,
It was a comfortable venue,
so, all right.
but they would take away business hours.
I'm making notes so I can,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
you're
chamber
bringing-
decision.
Yeah.
We'll go where they want us to go.
Yeah.
all right, let me check on that.
Okay, Regional Council of Mayors, Tom and I went to the meeting yesterday, and it was a speaker, Manconi, or,
Yeah, but basically represents a firm that does various types of analysis for municipalities. The presentation he gave on was related to downtowns and land use, and basically the return in the form of property taxes based on the investments you make relative to infrastructure, et cetera. It was a very engaging conversation. It was a very good speaker.
Is that Chuck Marone?
Yes.
yeah,
Yep, he's a very good speaker. I thought in the context of what he said, the great takeaway was when you're looking at development, look at the numbers and make your decisions based off of data, not off of I want. Although I do have to admit, and I had mentioned this to the mayor, I don't think in his presentation he really presented the full story either. I think there's some clear bias in there with regards to how he presented the data. But is all true, but I don't think it was the full picture. But it was a very interesting and thought-provoking presentation with regards to how do you look at investments that you make in infrastructure and other investments in downtowns relative to development in other areas. It should be pointed out that when he gave the presentation, he heavily promoted the idea of the value of Minneapolis. It should be pointed out that the data he developed was as a consultant to the city of Minneapolis, and was going to be giving that presentation to the Minneapolis City Council that night. But I thought overall it was a very good presentation with some very good elements to it.
I saw him speak once, and he had similar findings for Brainerd, which is where he's from, I think. That the downtown is much more valuable than people expected.
yeah, he was basically looking at value of development per acre.
Density value.
Than density value. So it was like, he showed, it was really kind of scary in a way, because for like a Kmart or Walmart is they value those at almost nothing. They're almost a loss leader for cities, especially Walmarts, but because they cost more than what they bring in, except for the jobs. And then they cost more for services, but it was an interesting presentation. It was almost scary when you look at it. It seemed like the two areas in Minnesota that he really thought were really great were downtown Minneapolis and downtown Wayzata. The value per acre was off the charts in those two areas.
Yeah, so the presentation, when you focus on that data point, the value per acre, is really interesting. But again, that isn't the full picture from a policy standpoint. So there are some other elements that you'd want to bring into it. But it was a very thought-provoking presentation about how to think about it.
Is it something we could read, or?
They will be sending out
He has a website too.
they'll be sending, the
blog.
Regional Council of Mayors will be sending stuff out, and
Okay.
So it's
And
not a
we'll make sure
presentation
that,
you have on your computer that you could just forward to us.
Not yet.
Okay.
it usually takes them about 2 weeks to get their presentations out, but
We have time.
I know, but it was really interesting, and I think we ended up sitting with the mayor
Crystal?
of Crystal and Janet Williams and
Larson.
Brad Larson, the new city administrator for Savage, so. It was very sparsely attended this time for a big speaker because of
It was really light.
what, I'm sure it was the downtown exits. Although Tom and I had no trouble getting down there. Just,
Well, you know all the back routes getting.
it only took us once we got to Minneapolis, it only took us less than 20 minutes to get downtown.
Just want to add that Chuck is an engineer and a planner. He's both.
Does he tell good jokes?
He's from
Ashland, North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Yeah. So, but it was an interesting presentation. We actually got to talk to him for about 20 minutes before the presentation, so. Okay, on to CCEC.
Well, you probably don't know, but we've got fire rescue days.
What?
Really?
I hate to spring it on you, but
That's literally next
next
week.
Wednesday.
When are we, do we have all the, like, when are we supposed to be here on Saturday and all that stuff?
Covered.
Okay,
I'll send out information to you, but
okay.
we met Tuesday night for the final meeting for preparation, and everything's falling together just fine. People get stressed out, but it always turns out no problems. So we do have some grand marshals who are military people from the Legion, VFW. I'm not sure how many we're gonna end up with because I think we got 5 so far, and there's still a few to be returning phone calls, so police will have that. So yeah, everything's falling together. The only thing I would say is, I don't know if you do know this, but this is the first year we have an official sponsor of Fire Rescue Days.
Oh.
We have Elko Speedway as
Oh, cool.
I was not
stepped
aware.
up and monetarily
That's awesome.
became a sponsor, yeah.
Nice.
So we're trying that for each event this year. And then we had a couple other good donations, so we're doing pretty good.
And we're gonna have double the candy we had last year.
We had a discussion on that Tuesday night about how much money is costing for that. Plus with now grand marshals, we could end up with 10 of those. So I think we're gonna be asking you to be a little more conservative
Okay.
instead of
What are you
doing.
looking at me for?
Don't look at me, I didn't throw candy last year.
That's true, but we are actually
That's
buying more. We are buying more.
I think it's, yeah, I think it was us.
Yeah, we're gonna buy more, but we might be asking for a little more budget money for candy.
And the type, you're gonna get the stuff that actually flies and doesn't break when it
Yes,
hits.
we're not getting any licorice.
The licorice,
Okay.
yeah.
because you
Sorry.
don't like
That
it.
doesn't fly very
It
good.
doesn't throw well.
And the hard, like, mints just shatter.
Yeah. we got,
Tootsie
I think, some
Roll,
pretty
okay.
good-
Sorry,
Tootsie
I don't mean
Rolls,
to
taffy.
micromanage.
Maybe she should just go buy the damn candy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've
exactly.
donated in the past, I did not this year, but I could go buy some candy. I would do that.
I think we'll have enough, to be honest with you. The one thing we really could use, if anyone knows, is volunteers. I know you guys are gonna be busy that time, but we certainly could use some more adult volunteers.
Did the Cub Scouts commit to the bounce houses?
Lori was gonna send an email, and I told
I
her
know
I
it's
would
been going
ask
around.
you. I would ask you if
I know that they were just working on
What-
finalizing that we had enough adult volunteers to be able to help the kids volunteer.
What type of activities do you need volunteers for?
about anything on the parade day, to be honest with you, during the parade, well, you guys won't know, but during the parade for lineup, at Wagner Park, we sure could use them. We do have Boy Scouts adults that are going to help at Wagner Park.
I thought the Boy Scouts were signed up for the bounce houses. Was that,
Yeah,
did I read that wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, did I just say that?
Oh, but you said Cub Scouts, are they the
Boy
same
Scouts,
thing?
Same. yeah,
Oh,
just-
same
same
thing,
group.
okay.
Don't you have any Girl
I'm-
Scouts
Really?
now?
My kids weren't in them, so I have no
We
idea.
got some troops, but now this year too, we're talking about, because
They know they're
girls
the
are
same
allowed
thing.
in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, so it's the first year that the Elko
What about
troop-
Eagle Scouts?
Elko New Market troop will be, being able to sign up girls
I
to
have
join
no
the
idea.
fall.
Same
so.
Okay.
Well,
I
hopefully
didn't
it'll
know
be
if they were
more,
different
but it
Different
makes
race.
sense for the bounce
Okay.
houses, because that's something we definitely need help with.
So are they changing the name to just Scouts?
Yeah.
Okay.
The United States is
That
the
will
last country that doesn't allow girls. We're the only ones that segregated out stuff.
That's just fascinating, okay.
But did they leave Girl Scouts? Called
Girl Scouts, because they're not
no
allowing
want
boys.
to go and join Girl Scouts.
Well, I wouldn't say no,
They don't
but
do as
now
much
they
fun
can.
stuff.
Well, and the
They
Girl
don't go
Scouts are not
camping
allowing it.
and-
But that's about it for me for, so from next Wednesday for 5 days.
Do you need help before? Like, is there something I can help with before, or you're really just the day of?
Well, we're gonna be filling up probably water balloons. Well, no, I think, we have somebody, I'm sorry. I thought we were gonna have to do that for St. Nicholas Church or School. Was that Holy Cross?
Holy Cross?
Holy Cross.
They're doing the balloon
They're gonna
toss?
do the balloons. We've
They're
asked
They-
them.
And we got chicken wire?
Yes, we decided you need to stand inside chicken wire.
Yes.
Well,
so
they've
that you
got,
don't
they've got,
get hit by.
they've got a screen, Tapestry has a screen we can use that I just stand behind.
Perfect,
Okay.
because
Okay.
that way you're not getting hit when somebody throws it really hard.
Really
And when
hard
the little
and
kids
beams,
throw
yeah.
it might actually break.
Well, let's just say, last year for the really little kids, I actually went out and stood in front of them and tried to catch it and would break it.
Okay,
I mean, they got more fun out of that than,
okay.
then I could, get myself good.
But yeah, but we don't want you getting hit by the ones the teens are throwing at 50
Well,
miles.
let me tell you, there were several of them last year, and I actually stood maybe 3-4 feet behind the screen, because the water was moving pretty fast.
Okay,
We do have the screen already, so.
Okay.
we have it
Okay.
covered.
good.
So it's Holy Cross that's getting the money then this year? Okay. Well, at least I didn't care who it went to, just so that somebody was getting,
We put it out there because we want nonprofits to get involved and.
or does CCE get any of it, CCEC?
Not of that, no.
Oh, okay. It didn't,
We're just here to help the community and it's all about the kids.
Thank you, Sandy.
me
We're all
too,
kids at heart.
me too.
Next.
That's why I want to get wet. Anybody else want to get wet? It's a great fundraiser,
Oh, it's a big one, sorry.
so. Okay, we're down to downtown improvement.
Canceled.
Canceled.
They're probably confused by the signs, they didn't know where downtown was. Sorry.
They went to the wrong
I've-
downtown.
I've heard
That would have
some,
been the right downtown, I suppose.
just so you know, I've heard some comments about the silt fence that was at the bottom of the hill for the Lions Garden. Wasn't put in right.
It's been
Because
fixed.
It's been fixed?
Mhm.
I haven't been by there lately, but,
Good Lord. People.
It
I
was,
knew
I
it
think
would
the
be.
wind blew it off and it was kind of kittywampus, but I believe Jim's been out there and has put it back up again and has fixed it. And weren't you just out there not too long ago with Rick and Jim?
No, but when it was initially installed, it wasn't installed properly, and we've asked them to.
Yeah, it's
To fix it.
reinstalled.
okay.
It is.
I just had heard from, I hear too much. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. The 50 by 30. And I'm gonna skip the steering committee. Transportation, it's basically, we're gonna try and set up a pilot program in the Elko New Market area for auto repair to start with. For people with, financial problems and need help. So we'll be going to the shops and parts people and the local churches for, donations and Fish will be coordinating it, so we'll be looking for people to join Fish to get into that program and for just the people that want to do the auto portion in Elko New Market. So it seems like, Fish seems to think that this could go all over the county, but they think we should try it here first. Because we do have a couple of shops that we know already that do that sort of thing. I know Automotive Ingenuity, I've heard, does it, and Parks Auto does it, and I think Offenburg downtown does some work for people, either pro bono or very cheap, and if we can include some parts and grant, money from other people to help supplement it, I think we can get something going here where people that need a car, that don't have the money, we should be able to keep their car running, so. Without any cost to the taxpayer.
Mr. Mayor, on the steering committee, might be good to advise the change with the interim director.
Well, Jake Grusing is now the I think he's project coordinator. It's kind of interim, but he's going to do it until he can't do it anymore. There is some concern from some people that the library system may suffer because he's doing more work on the 50 by 30 project, but it's saving 50 by 30 and scale $60,000 for a salary per year. So, and they pretty much decided that there's not gonna be any more Marnita's Table $20,000 dinners. That was not deemed a cost-effective use of our money, so.
I think the appointment of the new interim director is going to be good for the process. In the discussions I've had with him with regards to 50 by 30, I think as in the role that he has, I think his vision for what we need to be doing is much closer to what was originally sold as part of the original concept than what we've been experiencing over the last couple of years. So I think that there may be some change. It still remains to be seen, but the conversations I've had with them, it's a much more practical approach to it, where the 50 by 30 model isn't so much as a rigid recipe as general guidelines as to how you should approach the process, and I think we may see some differences in how things proceed going forward.
Housing?
I had Sandy forwarded my notes out to everybody, so feel free to take a look at your minutes.
What was you have any different take on the housing than before?
Not really. No, it's, yeah, one interesting thing is I could be, I think they're getting more, there's a desire to be more task-oriented rather than just talk about what we need, so. But we'll see how that plays out.
Workforce?
So on the line with what Joe just said, we in the workforce have decided it's time to lessen the whole group meeting potentially to quarterly and break off into smaller task-oriented groups. And you know, the frequency of those meetings is yet to be determined, but basically we've got some tasks that we want to action, and so let's just start moving on them. So we're moving towards that. We are in the process of looking at developing a website. The initial intent was a Scott County specific job website. We had Monster give us a presentation of what they can do and how they can design a website. They showed us different ones that they've designed, and they're as different as an apple to an elephant in how they look and feel, which is completely driven by us and how we want it to function and feel. So there's some question as to whether it's just going to be about jobs. There was a focus group who said there would be some benefit to having it be not just jobs, but more community-based, meaning maybe it had events for all of Scott County on there. Maybe it had interest things for Scott. Just so, you know, it's still being determined what this web will be. But I mean, the whole purpose is, well, the driving purpose was helping people find jobs and helping employers find employees.
Is there a way that on that web page you could put informational pieces for those that are looking to find a job on how to interview and?
Yeah, all that stuff is going to
will all
be,
on
yeah,
there, like just
yep.
helpful hints for people?
Yep, and one of the things they also showed us, and if you guys have never seen it or used it or whatever, it's actually quite fascinating. It's called Trait, Traitify, Traitify. It's an app, and instead of doing, you know, how those behavioral assessments and what's the best job for you based on you, those questionnaires can be pages upon pages long, and people find them difficult. There are levels of individuals who can't read that extensive amount, and just so then they're disqualified for doing this. This Traitify is really, it shows you pictures, and it says, are you in a job mode for a work thing, are you more this or are you more this? And you click, and then you go to the next thing, are you more this or are you more this? And based on what you're picking, there's about 50, I don't know, but let's say there's 50, but I mean, it's quick, right? You're snap, 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 snap. And so you get through this personality assessment in minutes instead of potentially over an hour or whatever. And it's got all kinds of snazzy ways of displaying where your areas of strengths are, where your weaknesses are, what are your best jobs, what are your what are the income levels of the jobs that it's fascinating. So if you've never seen it or tried it, trade a
Want to
file.
know at this point?
Well,
Yeah.
you know, so, but wouldn't that be an interesting thing, right, to
Oh,
see?
geez.
Find out
So
your
they'll
work.
collect all the
I've been a
psychological
psychologist
information
all
on you
along.
and
I
that.
should have been.
But
I don't know what you would buy.
right, but it was really, it was fascinating.
I see it.
But I mean, that would be something that, you know, through the web.
I think that's a great idea.
So it was things like that, that was it. But it was that was it, that it was
I
fascinating.
wrote it down.
Tradeify, fascinating.
It's an app.
It's an app, yep. And it will fit, it's written, so the creator and developer of this was on the phone with us talking about
neat.
this product, and which was kind of cool, but it'll fit whatever, like if you're bringing it up on your phone, it will fit your screen and still be usable versus a laptop, versus a laptop versus, it's pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
It's something interesting to maybe have your kids do, right? So it's friendly like that. So anyway,
Very cool.
I'm done.
Discussion by council.
I actually noticed on Facebook today that there is an Elko New Market food shelf. It's starting next right, so it starts next Wednesday. They're looking for volunteers. I'm simply bringing it up. I plan on being there, so I don't know if anybody else will or won't. Potentially may need to post it.
It's not a mobile food shelf. It's not a permanent one, it's just a mobile.
But it's gonna be but I'm saying I am going to go and volunteer, and if anybody else were to volunteer, we might have a quorum.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. If anybody wants the email address of the woman to contact for it, let me know. All done.
And if you do happen to show up and there's more than three or more, don't talk city business.
Well,
Stay
that
apart.
goes without
Right.
saying
That's
anytime that happens, but,
No brainer.
okay.
Just very briefly, I don't know if anybody noticed, June 11th, you wouldn't notice this. West St. Paul had their city council meeting, moving to reverse their decision to revoke that license that I've been talking about. They got taken to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals says they were wrong, so they had to reverse it. And they have decided not to appeal or go for a PFR on that decision, so.
Wow.
So
So they have
it
to
was
take
good.
it back.
It was brilliantly done by a bunch of advocates, and
Great.
it worked out well.
One thing I noticed this week is Seattle revoked or went back on their head tax for businesses. They were gonna charge so much per hour for every employee over in large companies, and they decided to change their mind. Too much pushback. One thing I was going to mention is the owner of the Chinese restaurant found a place to rent in the area. It wasn't ideal, but it's close. Yeah, well, no, he's renting an apartment for now.
A living.
A living,
Okay.
Right, I thought you were saying he decided to move.
Well, yeah, that's what I was like.
he was not going to open unless he could find a place to live, and he was actually considering
Okay.
not opening because from what he could see, the costs were too expensive in the area. But he wants to have his family in this area, and I think he's waiting now till the townhomes open because he wants to rent for a while till he'll move up here and get the business going and then move into one of those townhomes is what I'm
So
guessing.
he's not waiting to open until a townhouse is built?
No.
He's found a temporary
Right.
place. So did he give a date?
Probably the middle of next month he's talking about
Okay, so we're a
opening.
month out from where?
Right. His food is still really good because we've been down there a second time. So,
Okay.
just so you
Yeah,
know.
because there's been a number of people asking.
Yeah, and I talked to him at length, and he said that was the only thing that was stopping him, because they've got to live here for at least a week before they actually try to open the business, and so. Any other discussion by council?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I think we
Give
got.
it to Joe.
Thank you.
We'll give you the second.
Thank you.
Kate.
Kate
I
second.
don't care, whichever. Makes no
Trish was
difference
not
to me.
involved in this decision.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.